The rift opened above Metropolis like a wound in reality itself, silent and sudden. A tear in the fabric of dimensions that bent light into impossible angles. From street level, it looked like the sky had cracked. A spiderweb fracture spreading across blue afternoon. Edges shimmering with dark energy that tasted of universes where hope had died. Civilians stopped mid-stride. Phones raised instinctively toward the anomaly. While somewhere in the Daily Planet building, Clark Kent's head snapped up from his keyboard, eyes already tracing heat signatures beyond human perception. Something fell through. Not fell. Dropped, casual as a stone released from a child's hand. A figure in a yellow cape and red gloves, bald head catching sunlight. Expression blank with the particular boredom of someone who'd seen this exact situation too many times before. He descended toward the street with no visible means of propulsion. No flight aura or anti-gravity tech. Just downward momentum that ended. With his boots touching pavement. In front of a hot dog cart. The impact crater that should have formed. Didn't. The shockwave that should have. Shattered windows never came. He simply landed, hands in pockets, and looked around Metropolis with mild curiosity. Huh, Saitama said to no one in particular. Different city. The dimensional rift sealed behind him with a sound like thunder played backward, leaving only afternoon sunshine and the lingering ozone smell of dark multiverse energy. The hot dog vendor stared, mustard bottle frozen mid-squeeze. Saitama's stomach growled. How much for one? He asked, pointing. Then Superman arrived. The man of steel touched down 15 feet away, cape settling around broad shoulders. The famous S-shield catching light like a promise kept. His expression held that particular mixture of concern and readiness that came from years of responding to dimensional anomalies. Cautious but not hostile. Powerful but not threatening. Yet, Clark Kent's journalist instincts saw the details. Worn hero costume, clearly homemade. Grocery store quality fabric. Boots that had walked a lot of miles. The cape was attached with safety pins. But the stranger's eyes held something. That made Superman's Kryptonian senses tighten with warning, an emptiness that came from standing at the top of a mountain with no higher peaks visible. I'm Superman, Clark said, voice carrying the calm authority that had talked down gods and reasoned with monsters. That rift you came through, are you injured? Is something following you? Saitama turned from the hot dog cart, sizing up the floating man in blue and red. Strong, definitely. The way he held himself, the subtle density of muscle beneath the suit, the confidence of someone who'd never met a problem he couldn't punch through or fly around. Familiar. Disappointing. Nah, I'm fine, Saitama replied, scratching his bald head. Was fighting this weird dimensional monster thing. Punched it. Guess I punched through the dimension. Too. Happens sometimes. He said it like someone describing a particularly boring commute. This Earth. Superman's eyes narrowed fractionally. X-ray vision scanning the stranger's body structure. Human, definitely human. But something about the cellular density seemed wrong, too efficient. Like every atom had been optimized beyond biology's natural limits. No weapons. No armor despite appearance. Just a man in a costume asking casual questions about accidentally punching through dimensional barriers. Yes, Superman said carefully, descending to street level but maintaining distance. Metropolis, United States. Earth. You're saying you punched through a dimension? Yeah. Saitama's expression didn't change from mild boredom. You a hero here? You look like a hero. Got the cape, the symbol, the whole thing. His eyes tracked to the S-shield with something. That might have been interest. What's your deal? Super strength? Flight. You're floating, so probably flight. Before Superman could respond, his comm crackled, Batman's voice. Clipped and analytical. Clark, we detected dark multiverse energy signature in your location. Status. I'm here, Superman replied, not taking eyes off Saitama. Dimensional traveler, possibly from Breach Point. Human appearance. Claims he punched through a dimension fighting a monster. No visible threat, but he paused. Kryptonian hearing picking up the stranger's heartbeat. Slow. Steady, utterly calm. No adrenaline spike from dimensional travel. No stress from confronting Superman. Nothing but the biological rhythm of someone waiting in line at a grocery store. Something's off. Bringing the Watchtower sensors online, Batman said. Wonder Woman's en route. Don't engage until we know what we're dealing with. Saitama, oblivious or indifferent to the conversation, finally acquired his hot dog from the still-frozen vendor, dropping exact change on the cart. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, then looked back at Superman with the same empty expression that had carried him through 3 years of effortless heroism. So, Saitama said around a mouthful of hot dog, "You got any strong guys here? Like really strong?" The last universe was kind of disappointing. In the watchtower, 7 miles above Earth's surface, Batman watched the interaction through satellite feed while his fingers flew across the Batcomputer's interface. Beside him, Wonder Woman materialized from the boom tube's light, hand resting instinctively on her sword hilt as she studied the bald man in the yellow cape. Her warrior's instincts, honed across 3 millennia of combat, whispered warnings her conscious mind couldn't yet articulate. "Who is he?" Diana asked. "Unknown," Batman replied, pulling up the dimensional breach analysis. The rift originated from dark multiverse substrate, but he doesn't match any corrupted universe profiles. Energy readings where he landed show. Bruce paused, rechecking the numbers. No energy readings. 0. He's not generating anything, no bioelectric field, no metagene activation, no mother box signature. He's just there. That's impossible, Diana said. Dimensional travel requires energy displacement. Conservation of. I know. Batman's jaw tightened. Run a threat assessment. If Superman engages and it goes hostile, what's our response? Diana watched the stranger take another bite of his hot dog, stance relaxed to the point of slouching. No combat readiness in his posture whatsoever. Yet something in his eyes made her Amazon blood recognize a fellow warrior, one who'd fought so long and so hard that battle had become boring. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I need to meet him first." On the Metropolis street, Superman floated slightly higher, buying time while the Trinity assessed. The stranger seemed content to finish his hot dog, occasionally glancing around at the city's towers, with the mild interest of a tourist in a moderately interesting museum. No aggression, no fear, just profound, existential boredom wrapped in human skin. "What's your name?" Superman asked, voice still gentle but with steel. Underneath, the tone that preceded either friendship or fight. The stranger swallowed his last bite, crumpled the wrapper, and tossed it in a nearby trash can with casual precision. When he looked up at Superman, his expression finally shifted, not to hostility or excitement, but to something worse. Hope. Desperate. Dying hope that maybe, finally, this universe would be different. "Saitama," he said simply. "I'm a hero for fun. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. 3 words that would make Batman's contingency planning shift into overdrive, make Wonder Woman's warrior instincts scream warnings, and make Superman realize he might have just met someone who could finally answer the question no Kryptonian ever wanted asked. What happens when you meet someone stronger than you? In the Watchtower, Bruce Wayne pulled up files on every metahuman, alien, and magical entity that had ever casually described impossible feats. The list was long. None of them had punched through dimensions by accident. None of them had registered zero energy signature. None of them had looked quite so bored while doing it. "Clark," Batman said into the calm, voice carrying the weight of a conclusion. He didn't want to reach. "We need to test his limits carefully." Superman heard the unspoken concern beneath the words. What if he doesn't have limits? Saitama stood on the Metropolis street, hands back in pockets, waiting to see if this universe's strongest hero would be any different from his own worlds. Disappointed promises. The afternoon sun painted his bald head gold. His cape barely moved in the breeze. And somewhere in the dark spaces between universes, the dark multiverse stirred with interest, recognizing a soul that stood at the edge of heroism's abyss, one bad day away from deciding that overwhelming power without challenge could serve purposes other than fun. The Trinity had encountered gods, demons, and cosmic entities. They'd faced Darkseid's tyranny and Brainiac's cold intelligence. They'd stopped Superman's own descent into dictatorship in another timeline. but they'd never met someone who could break everything with one punch and found the power too boring to bother with philosophy. Saitama scratched his head, waiting for whatever came next, already suspecting it would be exactly like everything that came before. Disappointing. The Trinity convened in the Watchtower's conference room within minutes. Though Saitama remained in Metropolis under Superman's watchful presence. Through the observation screens, they watched the bald hero accept a second hot dog from the vendor, who'd apparently decided that anyone Superman talked to peacefully was worth feeding, while Clark maintained a careful 20-foot perimeter. Diana stood with arms crossed, studying the stranger's posture with warrior's eyes. Bruce hunched over the tactical display, fingers steepled, expression dark. Threat assessment, Batman said flatly. Not a question, a demand. Diana's hand moved from her sword hilt. A tell Bruce had learned to read over years of partnership. She only relaxed her guard when genuinely uncertain. His stance suggests no formal combat training, yet he moves with the efficiency of someone who's fought thousands of battles. No wasted motion, no performative strength. When he tossed that wrapper, she pulled up the footage, frame by frame. Perfect parabolic arc, calculated unconsciously. He's done this exact movement enough times for muscle memory to optimize trajectory, without thought. Showing off? Bruce asked. No. Diana shook her head slowly. Muscle memory from repetition. He doesn't think about physical action anymore. His body simply executes perfectly every time. That comes from endless practice, or, she trailed off, uncomfortable with the conclusion, or inherent physical supremacy. Batman finished. Someone who's never had to try. On screen, Saitama finished his hot dog and engaged Superman in what appeared to be casual conversation. Clark's body language remained diplomatic but tense. The micro-adjustments of someone ready to intercept a punch at supersonic speeds. Saitama gestured lazily while talking, completely open, completely vulnerable, or completely confident nothing could hurt him. Energy readings? Diana asked. Bruce pulled up the scan data, and the three greatest heroes in DC Universe stared at numbers that shouldn't exist. 0 ambient energy, 0 bioelectric field displacement, 0 metagene activation markers, 0 gravitational distortion despite observable mass. He's reading as human, Diana breathed. Completely, impossibly human. Humans don't punch through dimensional barriers, Batman countered. Humans don't survive dark multiverse exposure without corruption. Humans don't make Superman maintain combat distance. He magnified. Saitama's face on screen, blank expression, dead eyes. The 1,000-yard stare of soldiers who'd seen too much war. He said he's a hero for fun. Parse that. Not for justice, not for duty, not to protect people. Fun. Perhaps the translation is imperfect, Diana suggested. Dimensional travel can distort. His language patterns match Earth Prime English perfectly, Bruce interrupted. Colloquial Metro Detroit dialect with Japanese loan words. He means exactly what he says. He's a hero because it entertained him. Past tense hung heavy in the implication. Diana moved closer to the screen. Amazon senses reaching for something her rational mind struggled to articulate. I've seen that look before. In warriors who've climbed so high that no mountain remains unconquered. In champions who've defeated every challenger and found only emptiness at the summit. Her voice carried ancient sadness. He's bored, Bruce. Existentially, soul-deep bored. That's more dangerous than any malice. Batman's jaw tightened. Boredom with absolute power. That's how dictators justify atrocities, as interesting diversions from monotony. How Darkseid views entire civilizations. How Superman became a tyrant in the Injustice timeline. He pulled up those universe records. Images of Superman's regime burning cities to impose order. Power without challenge breeds. Stop. Diana's hand slammed the table. You're profiling him as a threat based on potential, not action. He landed in Metropolis, bought a hot dog, spoke peacefully with Clark. Those aren't the actions of someone seeking control. Those are the actions of someone who doesn't see us as threats. Batman shot back. Someone confident enough to ignore Superman's power entirely. You saw the footage. He didn't even look at Clark's heat vision scan. Either he's too naive to recognize danger, or he's encountered Nothing dangerous in so long that threat. Assessment is meaningless. Diana finished quietly. The words hung in the recycled watchtower air while below them. Saitama and Superman continued their conversation. Clark's voice came through the calm. Batman. He's asking about strong fighters in this universe. Says his world didn't have anyone who could give him a real fight. He seems disappointed. Bruce and Diana exchanged glances weighted with mutual understanding. Batman leaned into the calm. Clark, very carefully, asked him what happened. When he found someone he thought would be challenging. On street level, Superman processed the question. Kryptonian mind running threat scenarios while maintaining his public smile. Saitama, in your universe, when you fought opponents, what was the strongest thing you ever faced? Saitama's expression flickered with something almost like enthusiasm before dying back to boredom. This alien guy called Boros came from space. Said he traveled the universe looking for someone who could fight him. Destroyed cities. Killed a bunch of heroes. The stranger's voice remained monotone, recounting apocalypse like grocery lists. He had this form called meteoric burst. Could kick me to the moon. That was pretty cool. Superman's concern spiked. He kicked you to the moon and you survived. Yeah, I jumped back. Saitama said it like describing a bus route. Anyway, he used all his energy in one final attack. Said it would destroy Earth's surface. So I punched it. He demonstrated with a casual fist motion. He died. Said it was almost a real fight. He was lying, though. I wasn't even trying. The calm crackled with Batman's voice. Clark, extraction. Now. But Superman was already moving. Not attacking but repositioning, hovering higher, creating distance while maintaining diplomatic posture. Saitama, I need you to come with me to our headquarters. We need to understand how you arrived here and… Sure. Saitama shrugged. You got food there? That hot dog was good, but I'm still kind of hungry. In the watchtower, Batman pulled up astronomical data on moon travel. Diana, if his story is accurate, jumping from lunar surface to Earth requires escaping moon's gravity well, surviving vacuum, atmospheric re-entry, and calculating return trajectory. The energy expenditure alone would require power on par with new gods, Diana finished. Darkseid's Omega beams. Highfather's Astro Force. The source itself. She watched Saitama casually accept Superman's offer of flight assistance. Clark clearly uncomfortable touching the stranger, but maintaining heroic courtesy. Bruce, what if he's telling the truth? What if in his universe, he genuinely has no equal? Then he's the most dangerous person in this room. Batman pulled up contingency files, scanning protocols developed for Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash. Every hero who could theoretically become a threat. None fit. All assumed limits. Power without limit. Boredom without cure. Strength without purpose. It's not a question of if he becomes a problem. It's when. You're wrong. Diana's voice carried Themyscira steel. I've met beings of absolute power, Zeus, Ares, Hades. They all craved something. Worship, war, dominion. He craves challenge. That's fundamentally different. Is it? Bruce turned from the screens. Batman's white lenses fixing on Wonder Woman with detective's intensity. What happens when he realizes this universe can't provide the challenge he seeks? When he's defeated Darkseid in one punch, survived Doomsday, walked through Phantom Zone, and come back bored? He let the question breathe. What does someone with infinite power do when even gods bore them? The boom tube activated before Diana could answer. Light and thunder announcing Superman's arrival with their dimensional guest. Saitama stepped through, looked around the watchtower's massive conference room with mild interest, then immediately zeroed in on the food synthesizers along the far wall. Can I? He pointed. Help yourself, Superman said carefully, though his eyes tracked to Batman and Wonder Woman. Silent communication passing between the Trinity. He flew here without assistance. Said the vacuum felt breezy. Saitama approached the synthesizer, studied the menu options with more interest than he'd shown dimensional, rifts or Kryptonian heroes, and selected ramen. While the machine hummed, he turned back to the Trinity with that same empty expression. So, Saitama said, you three are the strongest here? Batman stepped forward, cape spreading like darkness made manifest, voice dropping to the gravelly tone that had made Gotham's criminals fear shadows. That depends on your definition of strength. I've fought gods with nothing but preparation and will. Diana has defeated Ares, god of war, in single combat. Superman has moved planets and survived supernovas. He watched Saitama's face for any reaction, excitement, concern, competitive fire. Nothing. Just patient waiting while ramen cooked. We've fought Darkseid, Lord of Apocalypse, Batman continued, each word carefully chosen to establish credible threat. A new god whose omega beams can erase beings from existence, who seeks to eliminate free will across the entire universe. We've stopped him 6 times. It requires everything we have, working together, and even then. Is he strong? Saitama interrupted, and for the first time since arriving, genuine curiosity touched his voice. The Trinity exchanged glances weighted with strategy and concern. Diana spoke, warrior to warrior. Darkseid is the embodiment of tyranny. His power transcends physical. He corrupts, dominates, destroys everything in his path. Defeating him requires. So he's strong. Saitama's ramen finished with a cheerful chime. He grabbed the bowl, took a loud slurp, then looked at the Trinity with something almost resembling hope. Where do I find him? Batman's hand moved imperceptibly toward his. Utility belt, contingency. Plans already forming for someone who wanted to challenge the universe's greatest threat, like ordering takeout. Superman floated slightly higher, ready to intercept. Diana's hand found her lasso. Hestia's truth humming with questions that needed asking. But before anyone could respond, alarms screamed through the watchtower, red. Emergency lights painting the conference room in blood and warning. The tactical display exploded with data, boom tube signature. Massive, planetary invasion scale. Location, Earth. Multiple continents. Parademons numbering in millions. Batman's voice cut through chaos with razor precision, apocalypse. Full-scale invasion. All hands, battle stations. The Justice League's practiced response activated instantly. Superman toward teleportation. Wonder Woman checking weapons. Batman pulling up global defense coordinates. Behind them, forgotten in the urgency of apocalypse, Saitama finished his ramen, set the bowl down carefully, and spoke with the same bored monotone. Is Darkseid attacking? Yes, Diana said, already moving toward the boom tube. This is exactly what we warned. Cool. Saitama cracked his knuckles once. The sound like thunder compressed a syllable. Where? Batman turned, Cowl's white lenses fixing on the stranger with new calculation. Darkseid's timing was too perfect, the dark multiverse breach. This impossibly powerful stranger, now full invasion. Either cosmic coincidence or deliberate test. The Lord of Apocalypse had noticed their dimensional guest and wanted to measure him. The Parademon swarm descended on Tokyo like a mechanical plague. Boom tubes vomiting countless. Shrieking bodies across the skyline. Wings leathery and violent. Weapons crude but effective. Faces twisted by Darkseid's technology into expressions of permanent rage. They swept through streets with practiced efficiency born of conquering 1,000 worlds, dragging civilians toward open portals. While the city's heroes scrambled to respond, flames consumed entire blocks. Glass rained from shattered towers. The screams carried for miles. Superman arrived first. Heat vision carving red lines through Parademon formations. Capes snapping in the wake of supersonic flight. He caught a falling child mid-plummet, deposited her on a rooftop, then tore through another wave with controlled fury. Flash materialized next, yellow lightning announcing Barry Allen's arrival as he vibrated civilians out of danger. Zones faster than Parademon claws could track. Green Lantern's constructs formed shields above civilian clusters while Cyborg's boom tube delivered Wonder Woman directly into the swarm's heart. Swords singing as it carved through apocalypse technology. The Justice League fought with the desperate precision of heroes who'd faced this nightmare before, always outnumbered, always outgunned, always one miscalculation from global catastrophe. Batman coordinated from the watchtower. Tactical genius turning chaos into manageable crisis sectors. Voice steady in. Everyone's calms despite the apocalypse unfolding across 6 continents simultaneously. Superman, Quadrant 7, tower collapse imminent. Flash, I need Parademon portal sources triangulated. Diana, there's a formation heading toward the Imperial Palace with civilian hostages. They moved like instruments in an orchestra conducted by necessity. Each hero's power applied precisely where needed most. Not enough. Never enough against Apocalypse. They'd push the invasion back, close the boom tubes, save millions while mourning the thousands they couldn't reach in time. Standard Apocalypse Protocol. Razor Precision, Apocalypse. Full-scale invasion. All hands, battle stations. The Justice League's practiced response activated instantly. Superman toward teleportation. Wonder Woman checking weapons. Batman pulling up global defense coordinates. Behind them, forgotten in the urgency of Apocalypse, Saitama finished his ramen, set the bowl down carefully, and spoke with the same bored monotone. Is Darkseid attacking? Yes, Diana said, already moving toward the boom tube. This is exactly what we warned. Cool. Saitama cracked his knuckles once. The sound like thunder compressed a syllable. Where? Batman turned, Cowl's white lenses fixing on the stranger with new calculation. Darkseid's timing was too perfect, the dark multiverse breach. This impossibly powerful stranger, now full invasion. Either cosmic coincidence or deliberate test. The Lord of Apocalypse had noticed their dimensional guest and wanted to measure him. The Parademon swarm descended on Tokyo like a mechanical plague. Boom tubes vomiting countless. Shrieking bodies across the skyline. Wings leathery and violent. Weapons crude but effective. Faces twisted by Darkseid's technology into expressions of permanent rage. They swept through streets with practiced efficiency born of conquering 1,000 worlds, dragging civilians toward open portals. While the city's heroes scrambled to respond, flames consumed entire blocks. Glass rained from shattered towers. The screams carried for miles. Superman arrived first. Heat vision carving red lines through Parademon formations. Cape snapping in the wake of supersonic flight. He caught a falling child mid-plummet, deposited her on a rooftop, then tore through another wave with controlled fury. Flash materialized next, yellow lightning announcing Barry Allen's arrival as he vibrated civilians out of danger. Zones faster than Parademon claws could track. Green Lantern's constructs formed shields above civilian clusters while Cyborg's boom tube delivered Wonder Woman directly into the swarm's heart. Swords singing as it carved through Apocalypse technology. The Justice League fought with the desperate precision of heroes who'd faced this nightmare before, always outnumbered, always outgunned, always one miscalculation from global catastrophe. Batman coordinated from the Watchtower. Tactical genius turning chaos into manageable crisis sectors. Voice steady in. Everyone's calms despite the apocalypse unfolding across 6 continents simultaneously. Superman, Quadrant 7, tower collapse imminent. Flash, I need Parademon portal sources triangulated. Diana, there's a formation heading toward the Imperial Palace with civilian hostages. They moved like instruments in an orchestra conducted by necessity. Each hero's power applied precisely where needed most. Not enough. Never enough against Apocalypse. They'd push the invasion back, close the boom tubes, save millions while mourning the thousands they couldn't reach in time. Standard Apocalypse Protocol. Then Saitama arrived. Superman saw him first, a bald head rising above Tokyo's skyline via Watchtower teleportation, red gloves on hips, yellow cape barely moving despite the firestorm winds. The stranger surveyed the invasion with the same bored expression he'd worn eating hot dogs, as if millions of shrieking parademons represented mild inconvenience rather than existential threat. Saitama, stay back, Superman began, but the stranger had already moved. Not flew, not teleported, simply jumped. Feet leaving rooftop with casual force that shouldn't have generated any momentum at all. Yet he arced across Tokyo's burning sky like a missile given human form. Trajectory perfect, speed accelerating beyond what Superman's Kryptonian vision could track comfortably. He reached the densest Parademon swarm in under 2 seconds. What happened next would be analyzed by Batman's computers for weeks and never quite make physical sense. Saitama didn't fight the parademons so much as erase them. His fist moved in a simple jab, no wind-up, no obvious force multiplication, just straightforward punch mechanics that any human could attempt. The shockwave that followed defied conservation of energy. It rippled outward in a perfect sphere, compressing air molecules into visible distortion, catching every Parademon within. 3 city blocks and simultaneously pulverizing them into component atoms. No explosion, no fire, just there then gone. As if reality had decided parademons simply didn't exist in that space anymore. Silence fell across those 3 blocks like a physical weight. Saitama landed on a building's edge, scratched his head, and looked around for more targets with the disappointed air of someone checking an empty refrigerator. Huh, he said. They're pretty weak. In the watchtower, Batman's hands froze over the tactical display. Every sensor in that quadrant had spiked simultaneously, seismic readings, atmospheric pressure, ambient energy, then crashed back to baseline as if the universe had hiccuped. 3 blocks of parademons. Thousands of apocalypse warriors. Gone in one punch. Clark, Batman said carefully into the calm. What just happened? Superman floated above the devastation. Kryptonian eyes scanning for bodies. Wreckage, any evidence of battle. Nothing. Just empty air where moments before a swarm had been tearing through civilians. And below, the stranger in the yellow cape, already jumping toward the next concentration of invaders with the enthusiasm of someone half-heartedly swatting flies. He punched them, Superman replied, voice tight with implications he didn't want to articulate. All of them, simultaneously. I couldn't track the impact force, but he stopped as another shockwave rippled across the city. Another impossible sphere of destruction, erasing parademon formations like chalk. Marks wiped from a board. Bruce, he's clearing entire quadrants per second. Diana carved through her own targets. Amazonian strength and divine weapons, making short work of parademons, designed to fight gods. But even her warriors, focus couldn't ignore the systematic annihilation occurring across Tokyo's skyline. Blocks of invaders vanishing in perfect spherical patterns. The stranger's bald head visible at each epicenter. Expression never changing from mild boredom. Is he using energy attacks? She demanded into comms, sword splitting a parademon mid-flight. Magic? Speedster vibrations? Negative, Cyborg responded, mother box technology analyzing every wavelength. Just kinetic impact. Pure physical force converted to shockwave. But the efficiency ratio is impossible. He's getting infinite. Returns on minimal energy investment. It's breaking thermodynamics. Flash stopped mid-rescue. Yellow lightning crackling around his confusion. Guys, I can see him moving, and it's making my speed force senses freak out. He's not fast, he's just efficient. Like watching someone take the absolute shortest path between 2 points and refusing to waste a single motion. It's creepy. Green Lantern's constructs faltered as he watched another wave vanish. Hal Jordan to Watchtower. What the hell is that guy? Some kind of new god weapon. Unknown, Batman replied. Fingers flying across keys, pulling up every test they'd run on. Saitama's biology. Human. Completely human. Yet eradicating apocalypse warriors like bugs against windshields. Just keep civilians clear of his engagement radius. Saitama landed on Tokyo Tower's observation deck, surveyed the remaining invasion forces with growing disappointment, then sighed. The sound carried surprising weight. Existential exhaustion made audible. These parademons had conquered planets. They'd broken Green Lantern core defenses. They'd made Superman bleed. To Saitama, they were weaker than the mosquitoes that had annoyed him in his own universe. He jumped again, casual arc taking him toward another swarm. And this time Superman intercepted, not to stop him, but to witness. Up close what his Kryptonian senses struggled to comprehend. Clark matched Saitama's trajectory, flew alongside. Watched the stranger's fist cock. Back with zero technical form or sophisticated combat theory. Just a punch. Simple. Direct. Absolute. The impact caught 80 parademons simultaneously. Shockwave spreading like divine judgment. And Superman felt the pressure wave wash over him. Not violent enough to hurt. Kryptonian biology, but present enough to measure. His mind calculated the energy output required to generate that effect. The numbers didn't work. Couldn't work. Would require power sources equivalent to. Are these guys supposed to be tough? Saitama asked, glancing at Superman mid-flight with genuine confusion. You said this Darkseid person was strong, but his army is really disappointing. Superman opened his mouth to explain that parademons were merely foot soldiers. That Darkseid himself was the true threat. That power level scaled exponentially with Apocalypse hierarchy. He didn't get the chance. The sky tore open. Not boom tubes. Those were control portals. Technological elegance despite their violence. This was rawer. Space-time simply parting like stage curtains. Before the entrance of a god who'd decided. Subtlety no longer served purpose. Through the rift came presence, massive, suffocating, the weight of tyranny made manifest. Red eyes burned in darkness. Stone skin cracked with ancient malice. Omega symbols flickered around broad shoulders that had carried the weight of enslaving entire galaxies. Darkseid descended upon Tokyo with the casual certainty of someone who'd never encountered resistance worth remembering. The Lord of Apocalypse surveyed the devastated Parademon swarms, the scattered Justice League, the smoking ruins of a city caught between heroism and annihilation. His eyes, burning with power that could erase souls from existence, settled on the bald man in the yellow cape with something that might have been curiosity in a being less certain of his own supremacy. You, Darkseid said, voice like continents grinding together, each word carrying harmonics that made reality shudder. You reek of foreign dimensions, dark places where I have not yet extended my reach. He floated closer. Apocalypse technology and new god physiology making physics bow to his presence. You have destroyed my soldiers. This amuses me. Saitama looked up at the towering figure, 9 feet of living stone and cosmic malice. Power radiating invisible waves that made parademons cower and heroes prepare. Desperate last stands. The stranger's expression finally changed. Not to fear, not to awe, to mild interest. Are you Darkseid? Saitama asked. The strong guy they were talking about? The Justice League tensed. Superman moved to intervene. Wonder Woman raised sword. Batman's fingers flew across contingency protocols. They'd fought Darkseid 6 times. One only through impossible teamwork, sacrifice, and luck. Watching a stranger casually question the universe's greatest tyrant felt like witnessing someone poke a nuclear weapon to see if it would respond. Darkseid's eyes narrowed, Omega energy crackling around craggy features. I am Darkseid. I am the revelation, the tiger, the void in which all meaning dies. I have broken pantheons. I have enslaved the source itself to my will. He leaned closer, presence crushing, gravitational force of absolute power examining an anomaly. And you are nothing. A cosmic accident. A dimensional refugee who will kneel or be erased. Saitama scratched his head, genuinely considering. These guys, he gestured at the destroyed Parademon swarms, were pretty weak. Are you actually stronger, or is this like a boss minion situation where you're just better at talking? In the Watchtower, Batman made a decision. That would haunt strategic discussions for years. Everyone, pull back. Now, get civilians to minimum safe distance. Bruce, we can't just, Diana began. Pull back. Batman's voice carried the weight of someone who'd calculated odds and found only catastrophe on every vector. If Darkseid engages this stranger at full power in downtown Tokyo, the collateral will be extinction level. We need space. Superman understood. First, the terrible calculus of trying to protect Earth from a battle between beings who operated on scales that made Kryptonian strength seem quaint. League, coordinate evacuation. Flash, start clearing a 5-mile radius. Lantern, shields up for civilian clusters. Diana, I'm not leaving you alone with him, Wonder Woman said, but she was already moving, herding civilians through Cyborg's emergency boom tubes. Warrior's discipline overriding Warrior's pride. Darkseid ignored the scurrying heroes. His entire focus had locked onto Saitama with the intensity of someone who'd conquered universes and found only boredom at victories. Summit, a feeling he'd never expected to encounter mirrored in another being's dead eyes. You seek strength, Darkseid observed. Omega energy building around clenched fists. You wear disappointment like armor. I recognize the emptiness of absolute power. His smile could have frozen suns. Perhaps you are not nothing. Perhaps you are the challenge I ceased seeking millennia ago. Saitama's expression flickered with something dangerous, not anger or fear, but hope. Desperate and dying. The same hope that had carried him through 3 years of effortless victory. Searching for one genuine fight. Really, The word came soft, almost vulnerable. You're actually strong. Darkseid's Omega beams. Ignited, twin streams of red energy that could erase beings from existence. That had killed new gods and humbled Superman. That represented the fundamental concept of entropy given directed purpose. They lanced toward Saitama at light speed. Reality bending around their passage, carrying power enough to obliterate continents. Saitama didn't dodge. The Omega beam struck center mass, red energy washing over the stranger in the yellow cape. And for one terrible moment, the Justice League watched what they assumed would be complete molecular disintegration, the fate of every being who'd underestimated Darkseid's power. Then the energy cleared. Saitama stood unmoved, costume slightly singed at the edges, expression shifting from hope to familiar disappointment. He looked down at his chest where Omega energy had struck, brushed some ash off his costume, then looked back up at Darkseid with eyes that had seen this exact scenario too many times. That tickled a little, Saitama said quietly. Then, softer, almost to himself. But that's it, huh? Darkseid's eyes widened fractionally. The first genuine surprise he'd expressed in millennia. His Omega beams had failed. The foundational power of Apocalypse, the energy that enforced tyranny across universes, had struck something and simply stopped. The Lord of Apocalypse smiled then, wide and terrible, the expression of someone who'd finally found what he'd stopped seeking. Show me, Darkseid commanded, power building to levels that made space-time crack. What universe creates beings who endure the Omega effect? Saitama cracked his knuckles once. The sound echoed across Tokyo like Judgment Day compressed to percussion. His face held no joy in the coming violence, no excitement at facing a god, just weary obligation to test one more disappointment. Okay, he said simply. Serious punch. Saitama's fist moved with the same casual efficiency that had defined every strike in his hero career. No dramatic wind-up, no shouted technique names, just straightforward punch mechanics executed with impossible precision. His knuckles connected with Darkseid's jaw at the exact moment the Lord of Apocalypse launched his counterattack. Omega energy and new god. Strength meeting absolute physical force in a collision that rewrote Tokyo's geography. The shockwave wasn't an explosion. Explosions had directionality, physics, predictable energy dispersal patterns. This was reality flinching, a sphere of pure, kinetic conversion that radiated outward from impact point, stripping buildings to foundations, peeling asphalt from streets, launching parademons still unfortunate, enough to be within blast radius into low orbit. The sound came 3 seconds later, a thunderclap that shattered windows in Osaka 70 miles away. Darkseid flew backward, not stumbled, not recoiled, flew, propelled by force his new god. Physiology couldn't immediately compensate for. Stone body carving a trench through 12 city blocks before crashing into Tokyo Bay with impact that birthed tsunami waves. Flash had to intercept before they drowned coastal districts. Water vaporized around superheated stone skin. Steam rose in cathedral pillars. And from the bay, laughter echoed, deep, genuinely delighted, the sound of someone receiving an unexpected gift. Darkseid emerged from churning water, cape streaming. Craggy face split in a smile that promised beautiful violence. A crack ran along his jaw where Saitama's fist had connected, the first wound he'd sustained in combat since fighting Highfather at the dawn of the New God Wars. His hand touched it almost reverently, fingers tracing injury with wonder usually reserved for archaeologists, discovering lost civilizations. Yes, Darkseid breathed. Omega energy crackling stronger now. Excitement fueling power reserves that had gathered dust across millennia of unchallenged conquest. Yes, you are real. In the watchtower, Batman watched seismic readings spike off every scale, fingers frozen over evacuation protocols, while his detective's mind struggled with data that defied analysis. Saitama had struck Darkseid hard enough to generate earthquake signatures comparable to tectonic plate shifts. The stranger hadn't used energy attacks, hadn't drawn on speed force or emotional spectrum, hadn't invoked magic or new god technology, just punched. Clark, Batman said carefully into comms, voice tight with implications. What's your assessment? Superman floated above the devastation, heat vision tracking both combatants. Kryptonian senses measuring power levels that made his own strength seem quaint. He'd fought Darkseid 6 times, had been beaten to unconsciousness 4 of those encounters, understood intimately the gulf between himself and true New God might. Watching someone casually launch the Lord of Apocalypse, like a fastball, made his worldview tilt. He hit Darkseid harder than I've ever managed, Superman admitted quietly. And he wasn't even trying. I could see it in his posture. No tension, no power build-up, just motion. His voice carried the weight of someone, recognizing they might not be their universe's strongest anymore. Bruce, I don't know if we can stop him if this goes wrong. Wonder Woman herded the last civilian cluster through Cyborg's boom tube, then turned to watch the bay where Darkseid rose like Apocalypse given form. Her Amazon blood sang warnings her conscious mind echoed. This battle operated on scales that made her lifetime of war seem like playground scraps. The Omega effect failed against him. Darkseid's foundational power, and it failed. What does that make him? Unknown, Batman replied, pulling up every meta-analysis on power ceilings. Strength classifications, force multiplication theories. All inadequate. But we're about to find out exactly how high his ceiling goes. Darkseid launched from the bay, stone body accelerating to hypersonic speeds, despite mass that should have made such velocity impossible. Fist cocked back and wreathed in Omega energy that could unmake galaxies. He covered the distance to Saitama in microseconds, bringing New God strength to bear with techniques refined across eons of combat mastery. Saitama blocked with his palm. The impact generated another reality-flinching shockwave, another circle of devastation that forced Flash to intercept falling debris before it crushed, evacuating civilians. But this time Saitama's feet stayed planted, red boots grinding shallow trenches in concrete as he absorbed Darkseid's charge without yielding ground. His expression remained disappointingly bored. Is that your full strength? Saitama asked, genuine question rather than taunt. Because these guys said you were really strong, and I was hoping. Darkseid's response was Omega beams point blank. Twin streams of existence erasure fired at range measured in inches, rather than meters. The energy washed over Saitama's face, red light painting bald head in apocalypse colors. When it cleared, the stranger looked slightly annoyed. That's getting old, Saitama said. Then headbutt Darkseid with the same casual efficiency. The Lord of Apocalypse's head snapped back, stone skull fracturing along fault lines that hadn't existed since his ascension to New God status. He tumbled through air, corrected trajectory through pure will, and came at Saitama from 6 different angles. Simultaneously, afterimages created by moving faster than light, each one carrying lethal force that had shattered planets. Saitama swatted them all aside like bothersome insects. Not with technique, not with sophisticated combat theory, just simple slaps executed with impossible precision, each impact finding afterimage and dispelling it, until only the real Darkseid remained, suspended in mid-strike, fist frozen inches from Saitama's face, caught by the stranger's grip with pressure that made New God bone creak. You're definitely stronger than those parade-mon things, Saitama observed. Clinical assessment rather than compliment. But you're still not really. Darkseid screamed. Not pain, not rage. Pure exultation, the sound of someone who'd climbed alone for so long that discovering another peak dwarf his own summit was religious experience rather than humiliation. Omega energy exploded from every pore. Reality warping around New God power pushed beyond safety margins, beyond sanity, into realms usually reserved for source wall containment. The battle escalated into something the Justice League could barely track. Darkseid and Saitama became blurs of stone and yellow, impacts generating localized earthquakes, shockwaves carving canyons through Tokyo's outskirts. They traded blows at velocities that made Superman's combat speed look pedestrian. Darkseid bringing millennia of fighting technique against Saitama's simple, devastating efficiency. Each exchange ended the same way. Darkseid launching elaborate attacks refined through eons. Saitama blocking with casual motion and counterpunching hard enough to crack New God physiology. Green Lantern formed shields above civilian sectors, rings straining against shockwave after shockwave. How long can they keep this up? Darkseid's power reserves are vast, Diana said, sword forgotten in her hand. Warrior's analysis struggling with data. He draws on apocalypse itself, the suffering of billions. The weight of tyranny made tangible. He can fight for days. And Saitama? Cyborg asked, Motherbox frantically cataloging energy signatures that made no sense. I haven't seen him breathe hard yet, Superman said quietly. The fight continued, Darkseid's Omega beams carving trenches through terrain, his fists pulverizing concrete, his new god fury making atmosphere scream. And against it all, Saitama responded with the bare minimum effort required. Each punch calculated to exactly match threat level. No more force than necessary to deflect or damage. Batman watched it all. Detective's mind building profile on the stranger with every exchange. He's holding back. What? Flash skidded to a stop beside the tactical display. Yellow lightning, crackling confusion. Look at his stance, never fully commits. Always keeps hands ready for casual blocks, eyes tracking. Darkseid's movements with boredom rather than focus. Batman's jaw tightened. He's hoping Darkseid will force him to try. Hoping this universe's greatest threat will finally be the challenge he seeks. And if Darkseid can't? Diana asked, though she already knew the answer. Then we've just discovered the saddest being in the multiverse, Batman said. Someone with infinite power and zero purpose. Darkseid and Saitama clashed again, this time over Tokyo Bay. Impacts sending water skyward in kilometer-high plumes. The Lord of Apocalypse seized Saitama by the cape, spun him with new god strength, and hurled him toward the city with velocity that should have generated plasma from atmospheric friction. Saitama corrected mid-flight, landed in downtown crater with knees bent, looked up at Darkseid with that same dying hope. Okay, Saitama said, and something in his tone made even Darkseid pause. I'm going to use a real attack now. If you survive this, then maybe you're actually strong. For the first time since arriving, Saitama's expression shifted from boredom to focus. Not effort. He still wasn't straining, wasn't drawing on hidden reserves or powering up through dramatic transformation. Just attention, the full weight of his consciousness directed at the problem of Darkseid, calculating the exact force required to test whether this universe held genuine challenge. His right fist cocked back, muscles coiling with familiar motion, and power built. Not visible energy like Omega beams or heat vision, just the terrifying potential of kinetic force, about to be released with impossible efficiency. Consecutive normal punches, Saitama announced, then moved. His fists became blur, not speedster velocity, but perfect efficiency. Each punch flowing into the next without wasted motion, striking Darkseid hundreds of times in seconds that felt like hours. Each impact carried force enough to pulverize mountains, multiplied by hundreds, concentrated on single target. The cumulative damage rewrote new god durability parameters. Darkseid's stone skin cracked, fractured, chunks of new god, flesh peeling away under sustained assault that didn't give him room to counterattack, didn't allow recovery between strikes. Just relentless percussion that broke body design to endure supernovas. The Lord of Apocalypse flew backward again, this time crashing through what remained of Tokyo Tower. Steel and concrete offering no more resistance than tissue, paper to new god mass propelled. At terminal velocity, he landed in ruins, smoking, damaged beyond anything the Justice League had managed in 6 separate encounters. And laughing, blood, dark as oil, glowing with apocalypse energy, leaked from cracks in stone skin. Darkseid's jaw hung loose, new god regeneration struggling to address fractures running through skull. His left arm bent wrong, Omega energy flickering unstably around clenched fist. He looked like someone had dropped a statue from orbit. Yet he laughed, genuine and unrestrained. The sound of someone receiving communion they'd ceased believing possible. More, Darkseid commanded, pulling himself upright through sheer will, body protesting every motion. Show me more. Show me what you become when challenged. But Saitama's expression had already shifted back to disappointment. He looked at his fist, unclenched it slowly, then sighed, long, exhausted exhalation that carried 3 years of searching for one real fight. That's it, Saitama said quietly. That's all you've got, huh? The words hit harder than any punch. Darkseid understood. Immediately, recognized the existential weight in the stranger's tone, the soul-deep exhaustion of someone who'd climbed every mountain and found only anthills. They were kindred in the worst possible way. Beings of such overwhelming power that challenge itself had become impossible. Except Darkseid had the anti-life equation to pursue. Conquest to occupy his attention. The systematic elimination of free will across universes. Saitama had nothing. You survived, Saitama continued, walking toward Darkseid with heavy steps. That's more than most things. But you're not strong enough to make me try. Not really try. He stopped in front of the Lord of Apocalypse, looked down at the being who'd conquered galaxies, and his eyes held only hollow recognition. You're just another disappointment. Darkseid's laughter died. For a long moment, the two beings stared at each other, tyrant and hero, both trapped at summits of power too high for meaning. Then Darkseid smiled, slower this time, calculation replacing battle joy. Perhaps, the Lord of Apocalypse said carefully, we approach this wrong. You seek challenge. I seek conquest. But there exists a third option. His omega beams flickered, this time not in attack, but in gesture, cosmic proposal. From one absolute power to another. Join me. Help me claim the anti-life equation. Together we could rewrite existence itself. Perhaps in universes remade to our specifications, we might finally find what we seek. The Justice League tensed. Superman prepared to intervene. Diana's hand found her lasso. Batman's fingers moved toward contingencies designed for exactly this scenario. The universe's most powerful beings forming alliance. Saitama looked at Darkseid for a long moment, expression unreadable. Then he scratched his bald head with familiar gesture. Nah, Saitama said simply. That sounds boring too. I'm a hero. You're trying to take over the universe, or whatever. That means we're on different sides. He turned away, hands back in pockets, walking toward the waiting Justice League with shoulders slumped. Sorry for wasting your time. Lex Luthor watched the Tokyo aftermath through LexCorp's satellite feeds. Fingers steepled beneath his sharp jaw. Brilliant mind processing implications. That would reshape every strategic calculation he'd ever made. On 16 monitors, cleanup crews excavated trenches carved by godlike combat while Japanese self-defense forces established perimeter around impact craters deep enough to expose subway tunnels. The financial cost would run billions. The geopolitical ramifications would destabilize Asia-Pacific for years. None of that mattered compared to the bald man in the yellow cape who'd made Darkseid bleed. Replay segment 47, Luthor commanded. His AI obliged, pulling up footage of Saitama's consecutive, normal punches frame by frame, each impact generating force equivalent to tactical nuclear yields, sustained over seconds that pulverized. New God physiology designed to tank supernovas. Analysis. Energy source powering observed kinetic output. Unknown, the AI responded. No detectable energy signature. Subject generates force through apparent physical motion alone. Efficiency ratio exceeding theoretical maximum by factor of, the AI paused. Recalculating. Calculation error. No upper limit detected. Luthor's smile could have cut glass. For 20 years, he'd watched Superman fly through metropolis skies. An alien god pretending a humanity while the world worshipped at his feet. For 20 years, Luthor had calculated, strategized, built contingencies to prove humanity didn't need Kryptonian salvation. And now the universe had delivered something better than any scheme. A being who made Superman look second tier. A human being, if LexCorp's preliminary biological analysis proved accurate. Mercy, Luthor said softly into his calm. His bodyguard materialized from the shadows. Cybernetic enhancements humming barely audible. Sir, prepare the helicopter. I'm going to Tokyo. Luthor stood, straightening Italian suit worth more than most houses. Mind already constructing approaches, arguments, appeals calibrated to recruit someone who'd just rejected Darkseid's offer of universal conquest. And compile everything, every frame of footage, every witness statement, every quantum fluctuation during his dimensional arrival. If this Saitama truly lacks ties to this world, then he lacks the sentimental attachments that make Superman weak. You're going to offer him employment? Mercy's tone suggested professional skepticism. I'm going to offer him what Superman can't, honesty. Luthor, Pulled up files on Justice League. Response times. The careful choreography of heroes pretending. Earth needed their protection while quietly enjoying godhood. Superman will try to recruit him with speeches about hope and justice. Batman will investigate him as a threat. Wonder Woman will test him as a warrior. All lies wrapped in heroic mythology. His smile sharpened. I'll simply tell him the truth. That power without challenge breeds two responses, tyranny or stagnation. And I'll show him which path Superman really walks. The helicopter rose from LexCorp Tower, sleek and black, carrying Lex Luthor toward dimensional refugee who'd accidentally redefined DC. Universe power scaling. Below, Metropolis gleamed in afternoon sun, Superman's city, the aliens' kingdom, the place where humanity had learned to bow before false god in cape. Luthor intended to change that dynamic. By the time his helicopter crossed into Japanese airspace, Justice League had established temporary headquarters in Tokyo's outskirts, disaster relief coordination, mixed with alien threat assessment. Saitama sat on rubble pile, eating instant ramen provided by grateful locals, apparently oblivious to Flash's nervous circling. Green Lanterns maintained distance, or Superman's hovering presence that never quite approached conversational range. Only Wonder Woman sat near him, warrior's instinct overriding prudent caution, studying the stranger who'd fought Darkseid to stand still and walked away disappointed. In my 3,000 years, Diana said carefully, I've met beings of tremendous power. Gods, titans, cosmic entities. Most wielded strength with purpose, conquest, protection, vengeance. You seem to wield it with. She searched for the word. Boredom. Saitama suggested around noodles. Resignation. Diana's correction carried weight. As if you've already seen how every fight ends and found the conclusion unsatisfying. Saitama slurped more ramen, considering. Around them, Japanese civilians approached with small offerings, food, water, gratitude expressed through bows and careful English. He accepted everything with the same blank politeness he'd shown, buying hot dogs in Metropolis. Finally, in my world, I trained really hard, lost my hair, got strong, became hero, thought it would be fun. But, Diana prompted, but I became too strong. The words came soft, confession rather than boast. Every fight ends in one punch. Every villain I face, every monster that threatens cities, they all go down the same way. Even that Darkseid guy, he was tougher than most, lasted longer. But, Saitama stared into his ramen like it held answers. Still just one real punch. Diana understood then, warrior's heart recognizing kindred tragedy. You seek worthy opponent. The Amazons have legends of such. Warriors, champions who climbed so high that combat became hollow. Most went mad. Some became tyrants, creating artificial challenges through cruelty. Others simply, she gestured at Saitama's expression, gave up. I'm still a hero, Saitama said, defensive edge creeping into monotone. I do hero stuff. Save people. Stop bad guys. Just because it's boring doesn't mean. I wasn't questioning your heroism. Diana's hand moved toward sword hilt, not in threat, but in warrior's oath. I'm offering understanding. Power without challenge is burden, not blessing. And you carry that burden with more grace than most gods manage. She stood, Amazon height making her tower over seated Saitama. If you choose to remain in this universe, know that the Justice League would be honored to fight alongside you. Not to command you, not to contain you, but to stand with you against darkness. Saitama looked up at her, something almost like gratitude flickering across board features. Thanks. You're the first person who didn't look at me like I'm about to explode or something. Oh, Batman absolutely thinks you're about to explode, Diana said with slight smile. He's currently calculating 63 different scenarios for how to neutralize you if necessary. But that's just Bruce. Give him time. The LexCorp helicopter descended then, corporate elegance drawing attention from League members scrambling to intercept before billionaire reached dimensional refugee. But Luthor moved with the practiced confidence of someone who'd walked into Superman's city countless times despite arrest warrants, restraining orders, and superheroic intimidation. He approached Saitama directly, ignoring League's attempts at interception, Mercy providing physical barrier against Flash's potential intervention. Saitama, Luthor said, Voice carrying boardroom authority refined over decades of corporate warfare. My name is Lex Luthor. I'd like to speak with you about Superman. Superman materialized between them instantly, cape spreading like shield, blue eyes hard with recognition. Lex, whatever you're planning. I'm planning a conversation, Luthor interrupted smoothly. Between two humans discussing the implications of alien gods pretending at heroism. Unless you're going to silence me through superior strength? Prove my point about how power inevitably becomes tyranny? His smile could have dissolved steel. Please, Clark, show our dimensional guest exactly what kind of hero you really are. The trap was perfect. Intervene and validate Luthor's argument. Walk away and allow recruitment pitch unchallenged. Superman's jaw tightened with frustrated recognition of no-win scenario. Designed by genius who'd spent 20 years studying Kryptonian weaknesses. Saitama stood, empty ramen cup carefully placed in recycling bin, and looked at Luthor with the same board assessment he'd given everyone since arriving. You want to talk about Superman? I want to talk about power, Luthor corrected. Specifically, what happens when beings of unlimited strength decide they know better than humanity how Earth should be governed. Superman pretends at humility while quietly positioning himself as judge, jury, and executioner. He's one bad day from becoming the tyrant. Darkseid aspires to be. The only difference is better marketing. Lex, that's enough. Superman's voice carried warning. Is it? Luthor turned to Saitama, ignoring Kryptonian God in favor of human audience. You've seen his power. You've measured yourself against DC Universe and found it wanting. But ask yourself, what prevents Superman from using his strength to enforce his worldview? What stops him from deciding democracy is too slow, justice too complicated, and simply ruling Earth through superior force? Nothing. Batman's voice cut through tension like scalpel. The Dark Knight emerged from shadows, cape spreading, white lenses fixing on Luthor with detective's intensity. Nothing stops him except the same thing that stops Saitama from doing the same choice. Superman chooses restraint, chooses to respect human autonomy despite power that could enforce any alternative. His gaze shifted to Saitama. The question isn't what prevents abuse of power. It's what motivates continued heroism when heroism becomes effortless. Philosophy, Luthor scoffed. Batman offers moral complexity. Superman offers false hope. Wonder Woman offers warrior's honor. All pretty lies to disguise the fundamental truth. Gods pretending at humanity eventually stop pretending. He stepped closer to Saitama, voice dropping to conversational intimacy. You rejected Darkseid's offer because you're a hero. Admirable. But being a hero in universe of gods means choosing which god to serve, the Kryptonian, who pretends weakness, the Amazon who remembers she's divine, or the human who refuses to pretend anything. Saitama scratched his bald head, processing arguments that cut closer to existential crisis than any punch Darkseid had thrown. Around them, Justice League waited, Superman ready to intervene. If Luthor's rhetoric crossed into active recruitment of weapon, Batman calculating whether to reveal Luthor's own dark history. Diana's hand on sword hilt in case corporate genius proved more dangerous than appearance suggested. I don't really get politics, Saitama finally said. In my world, heroes fight monsters and villains. Pretty simple. Here you guys seem to make everything complicated. He looked at Superman, then Luthor, then Batman. But that Darkseid person was definitely bad. He talked about conquering everything and killing free will. Superman stopped him 6 times, you said? This to Batman. 6 confirmed encounters, Batman confirmed. Multiple prevented invasions. Global catastrophes averted, countless lives saved. Sounds like hero stuff to me, Saitama said with simple finality. Then to Luthor. And you came here trying to recruit me against Superman? That makes you kind of a bad guy, right? Luthor's expression flickered. Brilliant mind. Recognizing rhetorical trap sprung by simple honesty he hadn't anticipated. I came here to offer perspective. You came here to use me as weapon against Superman because you don't like that he's stronger than you. Saitama interrupted, monotone cutting through corporate polish like blade. I've met villains like that in my world. Usually they're the ones I have to punch. He turned away. Conversation clearly finished. Thanks for the talk, though. Mercy moved to intercept. cybernetic enhancements priming for potential combat. But Luther raised hand to stand down. His smile returned, sharper now, calculating defeat's implications. Fascinating, Luther said softly. You possess power that could reshape civilizations. Yet you reduce complex geopolitics to hero stuff and bad guy binaries. Either you're the most dangerously naive being I've ever met, or you're playing a deeper game than anyone suspects. He straightened his suit. Either way, Saitama. Remember this conversation when Superman inevitably disappoints you. When you discover the gap between his marketing and his methods. When you realize that absolute power always finds justification for absolute control. The helicopter rose, carrying Lex Luthor back toward Metropolis while the League processed recruitment. Attempt that had backfired spectacularly. Superman floated closer to Saitama, expression grateful but concerned. Thank you, Clark said quietly. For not listening to. Are you going to become a tyrant? Saitama interrupted, genuine question rather than accusation. Superman blinked, caught off guard by directness. What? That Luthor guy said you'd become a tyrant. That guy with the bat suit mentioned something about choice and restraint. That dark side person tried to recruit me for conquest. Thomas, dead eyes fixed on Superman with uncomfortable intensity. Everyone keeps talking about power making people evil. Does it? The question hung in Tokyo's damaged air while Superman struggled with answer that carried weight beyond simple reassurance. Because he'd seen himself become tyrant in alternate timelines. Nightmare scenarios. The injustice universe where one bad day had transformed him from hero to dictator. He knew exactly how close the edge stood. It can, Superman finally said, honesty replacing heroic platitude. Power without accountability, without humility, without connection to people you're protecting. Yes, it becomes tyranny. I fight against that every day. Some days are harder than others. But you keep fighting it, Saitama observed. I keep fighting it, Superman confirmed. Okay then. Thomas. Expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed fractionally. That makes you different from Darkseid. He stopped fighting it. Decided conquest was better than restraint. He started walking toward cleanup crews that could use super strength for debris removal. I'm going to help clean up. You guys do coordination or whatever. Wonder Woman watched him go, then turned to Superman with Amazon wisdom earned across millennia. He understands power's burden better than he admits. The question is whether understanding prevents corruption or simply delays it. He rejected Darkseid, Superman said. Rejected Luthor. Chose heroism when alliance with either would have given him purpose. He chose heroism because it's all he knows. Batman corrected, emerging fully from shadows. But purpose and habit aren't the same thing. Eventually, habit without meaning breaks down. We need to find him something to care about beyond punching things. Or Luthor's prophecy becomes self-fulfilling. In the wreckage of Tokyo, Saitama lifted steel beams with casual strength, helping extract trapped civilians while disaster crews coordinated around him. He moved with familiar efficiency, hero work that had become muscle memory, routine that filled hours without filling emptiness. Around him, people expressed gratitude. Children stared with awe. News cameras captured footage that would play on every network globally. One Punch Man had arrived in DC Universe, and nobody, least of all Saitama himself, knew whether his presence represented salvation or countdown to catastrophe. 3 weeks passed before Amanda Waller made her move. Saitama had settled into a routine that baffled the Justice League and concerned Batman's increasingly elaborate contingency planning. The dimensional refugee rented a small apartment in Metropolis, 4th floor walk-up in Suicide Slum, the kind of neighborhood where gunfire served as ambient noise and Superman's patrols came twice nightly. He paid rent through disaster relief stipend provided by Japanese government in gratitude for Tokyo cleanup, bought groceries at corner stores that charged protection money to 3 different gangs, and continued hero work with the same bored efficiency that had defined his career. Muggers learned quickly that the bald guy in the yellow cape wasn't worth targeting. Metahuman criminals made that mistake exactly once before. Word spread through underworld networks. Suicide Slum had new protector who ended fights in single punches and showed no interest in dramatic confrontations or villain monologues. Superman checked on him regularly. Attempts at mentorship that felt increasingly awkward as weeks revealed. Saitama's complete disinterest in Justice League. Membership, heroic philosophy, or power registration protocols. He just wanted to be hero. Fight bad guys. Save people. The simplicity frustrated Clark's attempts at deeper connection. He's not integrating, Superman said during League meeting. Holographic display showing Saitama's patrol patterns overlaid on crime statistics. He helps when he encounters problems, but doesn't coordinate, doesn't communicate, just exists in our universe like he's waiting for something. He's waiting for a challenge, Diana observed. We discussed this. His entire existence is search for worthy opponent. Then we need to give him purpose beyond combat, Clark argued. Community connections, relationships, reasons to care about this world beyond. He doesn't want reasons, Batman interrupted, pulling up psychological profile built from 3 weeks of observation. He wants what he can't have, difficulty, struggle, the feeling of genuine effort, required to overcome obstacle. We can't provide that. His white lenses fixed on Superman. Can you? The question carried weight beyond tactical assessment. Superman's jaw tightened. I don't know. Maybe in training, controlled environment. You'd lose, Flash said bluntly. Yellow lightning crackling nervous energy. Sorry, Clark, but we all saw Tokyo. He made Darkseid look like practice dummy. You spar with him, you're putting yourself in danger to satisfy his boredom. That's not heroism. That's therapeutic punching bag. Barry's right, Cyborg added, Mother Box data still analyzing Tokyo combat. His power ceiling is either non-existent or so high that testing it would generate extinction-level collateral. We need to accept that some beings can't be challenged conventionally. Then what do we do? Superman's frustration leaked through usual calm. Just let him drift through our universe waiting for something to care about? Hope he doesn't get bored enough to. The alarms cut through debate. Watchtower security breach. Unauthorized boom, tube activation in teleportation bay. Batman's hands flew across console while League members shifted to combat readiness, then relaxed fractionally as identification protocols resolved. It's Waller, Batman said, voice tight with implications. She's using White House authorization codes. Amanda Waller materialized from light and thunder. Business suit immaculate, tablet under one arm. Expression carrying bureaucratic authority that made Superman's heroic charisma seem quaint by comparison. Behind her, 2 armored soldiers stood at attention, not quite threatening, not quite ceremonial, precisely calibrated to remind everyone that government oversight existed, whether heroes acknowledged it or not. Justice League, Waller said without preamble. We need to discuss the Saitama situation. There is no situation, Superman replied, floating slightly higher in unconscious dominance display. He's a hero doing hero work. His dimensional arrival was accidental. His actions have been consistently heroic. And he's rejected recruitment by both Darkseid and Lex Luthor, which makes him perfect for what I have in mind. Waller countered smoothly. Activating tablet to display dossier. Task Force X requires specialized asset for high-risk scenario. Cadmus has detected temporal anomaly in Star City, suggesting either speedster interference or timeline fracture. Regular metahumans can't handle temporal instability without paradox risk. Your team, she gestured at Flash, is too valuable to risk on what might be trap, but someone immune to conventional damage, capable of resolving conflicts through overwhelming force, operating outside established hero networks? Her smile could have filed taxes. That's exactly what Suicide Squad needs. Absolutely not. Batman's voice carried Dark Knight finality. You're not recruiting him as government weapon. I'm recruiting him as contractor for specific mission with appropriate compensation. Waller corrected. No different than Justice League accepting UN funding, Batman accepting GCPD cooperation, or Wonder Woman liaising with Themyscira on behalf of Surface World. He's powerful, currently purposeless, and living in an apartment that costs more than disaster relief can sustain long-term. I'm offering job. Diana's hand found sword hilt. The Suicide Squad is collection of criminals forced into service through implanted explosives and blackmail. You're comparing that to diplomatic cooperation. I'm comparing that to pragmatic reality, Waller replied, unfazed by Amazon warriors' implicit threat. Saitama isn't citizen, doesn't have identity documentation. can't legally work conventional employment, and has demonstrated power that makes most governments nervous. He can either operate in legal, gray area until someone less friendly than me decides he's threat, requiring containment, or he can accept legitimate government contract providing income, purpose, and implicit protection from agencies that view dimensional refugees as security risks. The trap's elegance made Batman's jaw tighten with frustrated recognition. Waller hadn't come to threaten or coerce. She'd come with job offer. That actually solved real problems while recruiting assets she wanted. Classic Waller, finding where pragmatism and manipulation intersected. What's the mission? Batman asked, detective's mind already analyzing what temporal anomaly would require. Saitama specifically. Waller pulled up mission parameters, Star City. 3 days ago, temporal distortion suggesting either reverse flash interference or time-displaced technology. Local heroes investigating found frozen time bubble containing civilian population. Attempts to penetrate bubble using conventional speedster vibrations risked catastrophic paradox. They needed someone who could simply punch through temporal barrier without triggering causality cascade. You want him to punch time? Flash said incredulously. I want him to apply sufficient kinetic force to temporal barrier that reality reclassifies it as conventional obstacle rather than quantum phenomena. Waller corrected. Your speed-force interaction with time follows rules. His power seems to ignore rules entirely. That makes him perfect for scenarios where breaking physics is preferable to navigating them. Superman floated down to eye level with Waller, cape settling with controlled precision. And if he refuses, then I accept his refusal like civilized person and pursue alternative solutions. Waller said with bureaucratic patience. Despite your assumptions about my methods, I'm not here to threaten or coerce. I'm here to offer someone with too much power and too little purpose exactly what he's been lacking, a job that might actually require effort. The words landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Batman's psychological profile had reached similar conclusion. Saitama needed occupation beyond waiting for worthy opponent. Purpose beyond heroic routine. Something that mattered enough to care about even when easy. We should ask him, Diana said quietly. Not decide for him. He's demonstrated consistent heroism and surprising wisdom. Regarding power's corruption, respect his agency. Agreed, Superman said, though reluctance colored his tone. But we do this transparently. No manipulation, no hidden explosives, no Suicide Squad standard operating procedure. If Saitama agrees to help, it's as consultant with full operational authority, not conscripted asset. Waller's smile suggested she'd expected exactly this negotiation. Acceptable. I'll present offer directly, with full disclosure of mission parameters and compensation structure. You can monitor the conversation if you're that concerned about my corrupting influence. 20 minutes later, Saitama's apartment door opened to reveal Superman, Wonder Woman, and Amanda Waller in unlikely diplomatic formation. The dimensional refugee looked at them with familiar boredom, cape hanging on coat rack beside hero costume that had seen better days. Did I do something wrong? Saitama asked, genuine concern threading through monotone. No, Superman said quickly. Ms. Waller has a job offer. We're here to ensure it's presented fairly. Waller stepped forward, tablet displaying mission parameters with practiced efficiency. Mr. Saitama, I'm Director Amanda Waller, head of Argus, Advanced Research Group Uniting Superhumans. I have a mission that requires your specific capabilities. Star City temporal anomaly, civilian population trapped in time bubble. Conventional methods risk catastrophic paradox. I need someone who can punch through quantum barrier without triggering causality cascade. Saitama listened, expression unreadable. You want me to punch time? I want you to break temporal barrier through sufficient kinetic force that physics reclassifies it as conventional obstacle. Waller corrected with same bureaucratic precision she'd used on Flash. Compensation would be $10,000 plus hazard pay, full medical coverage despite your apparent invulnerability, and legal documentation establishing you as government contractor with associated protections. Legal documentation? Saitama's interest sparked fractionally. Social security number, work visa, tax identification, everything needed to exist legally in this world rather than gray area refugee status. Waller's research had been thorough. You'd be able to rent apartments without cash deposits, establish credit, exist in our society beyond hero work and disaster relief charity. Superman shifted uncomfortably. Amanda, I'm offering practical solutions to practical problems, Waller interrupted. He's powerful enough that most governments view him as walking WMD. Having official contractor status with U.S. government provides diplomatic cover, makes other nations less likely to attempt containment protocols, and gives him legal standing if someone tries treating him as lab specimen rather than person. Diana's warrior instincts recognized truth when spoken, even by bureaucrat she generally distrusted. She's not wrong, Clark. Saitama exists in legal limbo that becomes dangerous the longer it continues. This provides framework. Saitama looked between them, Superman's heroic concern, Diana's pragmatic understanding, Waller's bureaucratic efficiency. Then he scratched his bald head with familiar gesture. Will there be strong guys? He asked. Like, guarding the time bubble or whatever. Villains I'd have to fight. Unknown, Waller admitted. Temporal anomaly could be trap, could be accident, could be speedster villain testing defenses. Standard protocol would be deploying full Suicide Squad for support, but if you're concerned about challenge. I'm not concerned, Saitama interrupted. I was hoping there might be. The honesty in his tone made Superman's expression tighten with understanding. But okay, I'll help with the time bubble thing. People trapped need saving, and you're offering money for rent. He paused. Do I have to kill anyone? Because I'm a hero, not an assassin. Rules of engagement are defensive and rescue-focused, Waller confirmed. Lethal force authorized only if absolutely necessary to protect civilian lives. Given your power level, I suspect you won't need lethal force for anything short of Darkseid tier threat. Okay then. Saitama extended his hand for handshake, sealing agreement with same casual efficiency he applied to everything. When do we start? Waller shook his hand. Bureaucratic satisfaction barely visible beneath professional mask. Transport leaves for Star City at 0600 tomorrow. I'll have documentation processed. By end of business today. She turned to Superman and Diana. Satisfied. With transparency, Superman wanted to argue, to explain why government contractor status for being who'd fought. Darkseid to standstill set dangerous precedent. But he'd spent 20 years in universe where his own power operated in legal gray area, tolerated because he'd earned trust through consistent heroism. Denying Saitama similar legitimacy felt like hypocrisy. Just make sure he understands what he's agreeing to, Superman said finally. No hidden clauses, no conscription language, no. I understand contracts, Clark, Waller interrupted dryly. Despite your assumptions about my methods, I prefer willing cooperation to coerced compliance. More reliable, less paperwork. She nodded to Saitama. See you tomorrow, Mr. Saitama. Bring your costume. This might actually be interesting. After she left, Superman lingered in doorway while Diana waited in hallway. Both heroes struggling with decision to let Saitama walk into Waller's world. Saitama didn't seem to notice their concern, already pulling ramen from cabinet for dinner. You don't have to do this, Superman said quietly. If you need money, if you need legal status, the League can help. We have resources, connections. You offered before, Saitama interrupted, water boiling. Said I could join the Justice League. Get salary, team support, all that. He looked at Superman with dead eyes. But you didn't really want me on the team. You wanted to monitor me. Make sure I wasn't going to become like Darkseid or that Luthor guy said. The accuracy stung because it was partially true. Superman had offered membership while Batman ran psychological profiles, while Diana assessed warrior mindset, while League debated whether someone that powerful could be trusted. They'd offered inclusion wrapped in surveillance. That's not, Superman began. It's fine, Saitama said, ramen noodles dropping into boiling water. I get it. I'm really strong, and that makes people nervous. This Waller person is at least honest about wanting to use my strength for government stuff. Seems cleaner than pretending we're friends while you guys figure out how to. Stop me if I go crazy. Superman stood in doorway of dimensional refugee's apartment, feeling weight of Kryptonian power that had made him god among humans, and recognized mirror he'd never wanted to acknowledge. Saitama was right. The League had offered membership while treating him as threat, had extended friendship while maintaining distance, had welcomed power while fearing person. I'm sorry, Superman said quietly. You deserved better. Nah. Saitama stirred his ramen, steam rising. You guys are heroes trying to protect people. Being careful about new super strong guy makes sense. I'm not mad. He paused, something almost vulnerable crossing his features. Just kind of lonely, I guess. In my old world, at least I had hero association and other heroes who knew me. Here I'm just the weird strong guy who showed up and doesn't fit anywhere. Diana spoke from hallway, Amazon wisdom cutting through masculine awkwardness. Then we need to remedy that. Tomorrow, after the mission, you'll have dinner with League. Not as recruit or surveillance target, as colleague and potential friend. We'll tell stories, share burdens. Treat you as warrior equal rather than weapon to be contained. Saitama looked surprised, then something almost like gratitude flickered. Okay, that sounds nice. They left him to his ramen and small apartment in Suicide Slum. We're the most powerful being in DC. Universe ate instant noodles and watched basic cable because he couldn't legally establish streaming. Subscriptions without social security number. Outside, Superman and Diana flew toward Watchtower in silence heavy with implications. He's right to feel isolated, Diana finally said. We've treated him exactly as we feared being treated, as power first, person second. I know, Superman replied. But what if he does become threat? What if Luthor's right about absolute power corrupting? What if you're projecting? Diana interrupted gently. You've seen yourself become tyrant in alternate timelines. You know how close the edge stands. And now you meet someone even stronger who seems immune to corruption's temptations. And instead of celebrating that, you're waiting for him to fall because you fear you might. Superman flew in silence, her words cutting too close to truth he'd been avoiding. In the Injustice timeline, he'd become dictator after one bad day. He'd conquered Earth with absolute power justified as protection. He'd proven that Kryptonian strength without moral anchor became tyranny. Saitama had rejected that path twice, once with Darkseid, once with Luthor. Had chosen isolation over conquest, boredom over control, simplicity over sophistication. Maybe that wasn't naivety. Maybe it was strength Clark was still learning. Star City's temporal anomaly manifested as a sphere of frozen time 3 blocks wide. Crystallized moment caught mid-catastrophe. Inside the bubble, civilians hung suspended in panic's tableau, running children frozen mid-stride. Cars stopped in impossible angles. Flames locked between frames like photographs of fire. The distortion hummed with energy that made speedsters' teeth ache and reality warp at the edges. Quantum uncertainty made visible. Amanda Waller's transport delivered Saitama to the perimeter at dawn, along with Suicide Squad members who eyed the dimensional refugee with varying degrees of concern and calculation. Deadshot checked his weapons with professional efficiency, aware that bullets meant nothing against someone who'd tanked Darkseid's Omega beams. Harley Quinn bounced on her heels, mallet over shoulder, cheerfully oblivious to power dynamics. Captain Boomerang muttered about overpowered wankers, while Killer Croc simply growled, reptilian instincts recognizing apex predator. Only Katana maintained respectful distance, hand on soul-stealing blade. Samurai discipline acknowledging warrior who operated beyond her understanding. All right, listen up, Waller's voice cut through dawn light. Tablet displaying tactical overlay. Temporal bubble has been active for 72 hours. Every attempt to penetrate, using speedster vibrations or temporal technology has failed. Reverse flash signature detected at epicenter suggests deliberate trap, possibly targeting Flash or Justice League. Our mission is extraction of civilians trapped inside, neutralization of temporal device, and assessment of threat actor. And if Reverse Flash is waiting inside? Deadshot asked. Scope already tracking impossible angles through temporal distortion. Then Mr. Saitama demonstrates why I requested his presence. Waller replied coolly. She turned to the dimensional refugee who'd arrived in his yellow cape and red gloves, expression carrying familiar boredom. Your objective is simple. Punch through temporal barrier. Establish entry point for squad. Protect team during extraction. Try not to destroy Star City in the process. Sure, Saitama said, hands in pockets. Where do I punch? Waller indicated coordinates on tactical display, weakest point in temporal. Structure according to Argus sensors. Location most likely to collapse barrier without triggering causality cascade. Saitama walked to the designated spot, studied the shimmering wall of frozen time with mild interest, then cocked his fist back in familiar motion. Wait, Deadshot started, but Saitama had already swung. His knuckles connected with temporal barrier. In reality made sound it was never designed to produce, not explosion, or thunder, but something closer to glass, cracking across dimensions. Time itself fracturing under force that refused to acknowledge quantum mechanics. The barrier held for microsecond, temporal physics attempting to process kinetic input that violated every conservation law, then simply gave up and shattered. The sphere collapsed in cascading waves, frozen time resuming with jarring suddenness that sent civilians stumbling as momentum returned. Cars crashed with delayed impact. Flames consumed oxygen they'd been denied. Screams that had been suspended mid-expression finally escaped throats. And in the epicenter, where temporal device had been generating distortion, Eobard Thawne stood in yellow and red speedster suit, crimson eyes widening with recognition that his elaborate trap had been negated by someone simply punching time hard enough to break it. Impossible, Reverse Flash breathed, temporal sensors in his suit screaming. Warnings about causality, violations that shouldn't exist. You can't just, time doesn't work. Saitama looked at the speedster with the same bored assessment he'd given every threat since arriving in DC Universe. Are you the bad guy who trapped these people? Thawne's mind, genius intellect from 25th century, temporal mechanics understood on quantum level, struggled to process being addressed. Like common mugger, I am Eobard Thawne, master of the Speed Force, the man who. So yes, Saitama interrupted. You're the bad guy. Then moved. Not speedster. Velocity, flashes lightning fast. Perception would have tracked that. Not teleportation. Cyborg sensors would have detected. Dimensional displacement. Saitama simply closed the distance between them with efficiency that made Speed Force look wasteful, fist already cocked back for familiar motion. Reverse Flash reacted on temporal combat instincts, honed across centuries of fighting. Speedsters vibrated, his molecules to intangibility, preparing to phase through attack and counterstrike at velocity measured in attoseconds. Standard speedster defense that had worked against Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps. Saitama's fist hit him anyway. The punch connected despite intangibility, force somehow propagating through phased molecules to impact Thawne's molecular structure directly. The speedster flew backward at velocity that would have killed normal humans, crashed through 3 buildings despite attempts to vibrate through solid matter, and landed in Star City Harbor with impact that generated tsunami. Flash had to intercept before it drowned waterfront districts. Suicide Squad stared in collective silence. He just punched a speedster, Deadshot said carefully, as if speaking slowly would make impossible sight make sense. While the speedster was intangible, that's not. That doesn't. Physics is more like suggestion around him, Harley observed cheerfully, twirling mallet. I like it. Makes things interesting. Katana's hand tightened on her blade. Samurai wisdom recognizing something her rational mind couldn't articulate. He didn't counter the technique. He simply ignored it, as if intangibility was irrelevant to his strike. In the harbor, Reverse Flash pulled himself from water, yellow suit sparking with temporal energy. Genius mind recalculating every assumption about power scaling in this timeline. He'd fought Flash across centuries, had murdered heroes and conquered epics, understood Speed Force mechanics that made Einstein look elementary. None of it prepared him for someone who punched through quantum mechanics like inconvenient paperwork. Waller. Thawne's voice crackled through comms he'd been monitoring. Where did you find him? What timeline produced being who ignores fundamental physics? Not your concern, Waller replied already. Coordinating civilian evacuation while Suicide Squad secured temporal device. Your concern is whether you run now or get punched again. Saitama stood in the crater his punch had created, waiting with hands back in pockets. Around him, freed civilians stumbled away from temporal epicenter while paramedics rushed in. Disaster response protocols activating with practiced efficiency. He'd save them all by punching time. Standard hero work, executed with board competence. Reverse Flash vibrated to different position, not fleeing but repositioning. yellow lightning crackling as he accessed. Speed Force reserves usually kept for temporal combat. If conventional speedster techniques failed, then he'd escalate to timeline manipulation. Accelerate Saitama's personal time stream until entropy 1. Age him to dust across microseconds. Erase him from causality itself. He touched the time stream's flow. Began threading temporal acceleration toward the dimensional refugee. Saitama jumped. Simple motion, no flight technology or speed force access. Just upward trajectory. Calculated to intercept speedster Hood. Moved 300 meters away. The stranger cleared the distance in under a second. Casual arc defying every limitation gravity should impose. And Reverse Flash had just enough time to recognize that he'd fundamentally misunderstood. The threat before Saitama's fist connected again. This punch carried more force, not dramatically more, just precisely calibrated increment above previous strike. Reverse Flash's temporal armor shattered. Yellow suit tearing under kinetic impact that propagated through every defensive measure he'd erected. He crashed through Star City's downtown. Each impact crater generating seismic readings, until Saitama's follow-up kick caught him mid-bounce and sent him skyward. The speedster arced into low atmosphere, terminal velocity reversed. Consciousness barely maintained through trauma that would have killed most metahumans. His last coherent thought before passing out was recognition that he'd encountered being who didn't play by temporal rules, because temporal rules simply didn't apply to him. Saitama landed back on ground level, watched Reverse Flash's unconscious body descend, and caught the speedster with careful efficiency before impact could cause additional damage. He carried Thawne back to Waller's position like grocery bag, deposited him at her feet with same bored expression. He's unconscious, Saitama reported. Tried to do some time manipulation thing, but I punched him before it worked. Do you need me to tie him up or something? Waller stared at dimensional refugee who'd just neutralized one of DC Universe's most dangerous temporal threats through straightforward violence that ignored every defensive measure speedsters relied on. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but internal calculations were already adjusting every assessment of Saitama's capabilities upward. Power dampening restraints will be sufficient, Waller said, gesturing to Argus agents who approached with specialized containment equipment designed for speedsters. Good work, Mr. Saitama. Exactly the efficiency I was hoping for. Deadshot holstered his weapons, aware they'd been utterly useless entire mission. So we just stand here while Baldy does all the work. You secure civilians and maintain perimeter, Waller corrected. Mr. Saitama handles threats, operating beyond conventional metahuman capabilities. Division of labor based on operational strengths. She turned to Katana. Temporal device? Secured, the samurai confirmed. Holding crystalline sphere that still hummed with residual temporal energy. Appears to be 25th century technology. Likely stolen from Flash Museum or manufactured by Thawne himself. Should be analyzed at Argus facility under speedster containment protocols. Harley Quinn approached Saitama with mallet over shoulder. Grin manic, but eyes calculating beneath theatrical madness. So Puddin, what's your deal? You punch through time, beat up speedsters, make Darkseid your punching bag. You some kind of god pretending at human? Or human who punched his way to godhood? Saitama looked at her with same bored assessment. Just a hero. Did some training, got strong. Nothing special. Nothing special, Harley repeated slowly. Then laughed. Genuine amusement rather than performative insanity. I like you. You're either perfectly honest or perfectly full of it, and I can't tell which. Makes you interesting. Captain Boomerang muttered something about bloody Yanks and their overpowered bullshit while retrieving his weapons. Clearly uncomfortable being back up on mission where backup proved unnecessary. Killer Croc simply growled approval. Reptilian respect for apex predator demonstrated. Waller coordinated cleanup while Argus agents processed civilians. Paramedics treating temporal shock symptoms. And Star City police establishing perimeter. Standard post-crisis protocol. Executed with bureaucratic efficiency that made heroic chaos look amateurish by comparison. Within 20 minutes, the disaster zone had been converted to recovery site. Temporal device secured and Reverse Flash loaded into specialized transport bound for Iron Heights Speedster Wing. Mr. Saitama, Waller said as Argus prepared departure. I'll have your payment processed by end of business today, along with documentation we discussed. You performed exactly as needed, efficiently, with minimal collateral damage and maximum threat neutralization. If you're interested in future contracts, Argus maintains roster of scenarios requiring your specific capabilities, like punching things that normal heroes can't. Saitama asked, like resolving situations where conventional approach risks, catastrophic collateral, or faces opponents operating beyond standard metahuman capabilities. Waller corrected diplomatically. You're not weapon, Mr. Saitama. You're specialist for scenarios where overwhelming force represents optimal solution. Saitama considered, scratching his bald head. Will there be stronger guys? Like actually strong, not just fancy powers. The question carried weight. Waller recognized existential search for challenge that made being like Saitama dangerous, not because they'd become evil, but because purposelessness with absolute power bred unpredictable outcomes. She needed to manage his expectations while maintaining recruitment potential. I can't promise worthy opponents, Waller said carefully. What I can promise is variety, temporal anomalies, dimensional breaches, cosmic threats, magical catastrophes, situations where your apparent immunity to conventional limitations provides strategic advantage, purpose through problem-solving rather than combat challenge. It wasn't what Saitama wanted to hear, but honesty served Waller's purposes better than false promises. The dimensional refugee nodded slowly, accepting reality he'd been living since. First punch ended first fight too easily. Okay, Saitama said. I'll take more jobs if you need me. Beats sitting around waiting for something interesting. The transport returned him to Metropolis by late afternoon. Documentation already processed through channels that made bureaucratic impossibility look routine. Social security number, work visa, tax identification, everything needed to exist legally in universe that wasn't his. Saitama held the papers in his apartment, studied official recognition of existence, and felt nothing change. He was still bored, still lonely, still searching for fight that would make him feel alive. But at least now he could legally rent apartments and establish Netflix subscription. Small victories, he supposed, for dimensional refugee who'd accidentally become strongest being in universe of gods. The dinner invitation arrived via Superman personally, delivered to Saitama's apartment 3 days after the Star City mission with Kryptonian earnestness that made refusal difficult. Not Watchtower, too formal, too much like interrogation under fluorescent lights. Instead, Diana had offered Themyscirus Embassy in Washington, D.C., neutral ground where warriors could share meals without surveillance, equipment or tactical displays reducing conversation to strategic assessment. Saitama accepted mostly because the alternative was another night of instant ramen and basic cable existence that had grown hollow even by his standards. The embassy stood in Georgetown. Classical architecture housing Amazon culture transplanted to American soil. Diana greeted him at the entrance wearing civilian clothes, jeans and blouse rather than armor. Attempt at casual normalcy that didn't quite mask divine presence beneath surface. Superman arrived moments later. Clark Kent glasses and sweater suggesting journalist rather than God. Though Kryptonian strength still hummed beneath borrowed humanity. Batman came last, because of course he did. Bruce Wayne's appearance, tailored casual, wear worth more than. Saitama's monthly rent, carried. Dark Knight intensity despite absence of cape and cowl. He nodded to Saitama with fractional respect. Detective's assessment apparently satisfied by 3 weeks of observation showing consistent heroism rather than emerging tyranny. Thank you for coming, Diana said, leading them through embassy halls, decorated with Themysciran art, warrior mosaics, Amazon history. Reminders that gods had walked Earth long before Kryptonian pods crashed in Kansas. I thought we might benefit from evening as colleagues, rather than monitor and monitored. The dining room held round table, deliberate choice eliminating hierarchy. Everyone equal in warriors' fellowship. Food covered the surface in Mediterranean abundance. Grape leaves, lamb, fresh bread, wine that had traveled from Themyscirus' own vineyards. Saitama looked at the spread with more interest than he'd shown most. DC Universe threats. This is a lot of food, he observed. Diana's people believe meals should be celebrations, Superman explained, taking seat and gesturing for Saitama to join, breaking bread together, sharing stories. It's how Amazons build trust and friendship. Plus, you look like you've been surviving on instant ramen. Batman added bluntly, your apartment's grocery receipts suggest nutritional deficiency that would concern anyone interested in your well-being. Saitama blinked. You've been monitoring my grocery receipts? I've been monitoring everything, Batman admitted without apology. That's what I do. But I'm here tonight because 3 weeks of data suggests you're exactly what you claim, a hero doing hero work. Nothing more complicated. He poured wine with careful precision. That's rare. Most beings with your power have agendas. I just want to punch strong guys, Saitama said. Accepting wine he suspected was worth more than his security deposit. That's not really an agenda. It's the most honest motivation I've encountered, Diana observed, raising her own glass. To Saitama, warrior who seeks challenge rather than conquest, who wields absolute power with admirable restraint, and who demonstrated more wisdom in 3 weeks than some gods manage across millennia. They drank, moment of fellowship. That felt genuine despite surveillance, history, and power dynamics. Then Diana began telling stories, Amazon, legends of warriors who'd faced impossible odds, champions who'd climbed too high and found emptiness at victory's summit, cautionary tales wrapped in warriors' honor, acknowledging struggle. Saitama faced with more grace than psychiatric assessment could manage. Superman shared his own journey, arriving on Earth with godlike power, learning restraint through Jonathan Kent's patient wisdom, the constant balance between helping and controlling. Some days I want to solve every problem, Clark admitted quietly. End wars, cure diseases, remake world according to my vision of justice. Then I remember that power without consent is just tyranny with better marketing. Lex Luthor said something like that, Saitama observed around grape leaves. That you were one bad day from becoming dictator. Superman's jaw tightened, but he didn't deflect. He's right. I've seen timelines where I became exactly that, the injustice universe, where I established regime after Joker killed Lois and our unborn child, used my power to impose peace through absolute control, became the thing I'd spent lifetime fighting against. He met Saitama's eyes directly. So I understand the burden you carry, knowing you could solve everything through force, but choosing not to. I don't really think about solving everything, Saitama said. I just think about finding someone who can make me try. Someone strong enough that I have to use my full strength instead of just. He made casual punching motion. This. Batman leaned forward. Detectives. Intensity focusing on existential. Admission that explained 3 weeks of behavioral patterns. What happens if you never find that opponent? If this universe, like your own, simply cannot provide challenge you seek? The question hung heavy while Saitama considered, wine glass turning slowly in his hands. Around them, embassy walls held. Amazon history, 3,000 years of warriors finding meaning through combat. Diana watched him with understanding earned across millennia of similar struggles. I don't know, Saitama finally admitted. In my world, I kept being hero because it was right thing to do. Even when it got boring, even when every fight ended same way, I still showed up because people needed saving. He paused, something vulnerable crossing his features. But I'm not sure how long I can keep doing that. How long anyone can keep doing something that feels meaningless. Meaning isn't found in challenge alone, Diana said gently. Amazons train for centuries to perfect combat skills, yes. But we also build community, forge friendships, create art and culture beyond warfare. Challenge tests us, but connection sustains us. I'm not good at connection, Saitama said. In my world, I had other heroes I worked with sometimes. Genos was my apprentice, kind of. But mostly I was alone because I was too different, too strong. Here it's the same. You guys are nice, but we're not really friends. I'm just the weird, powerful guy you're trying to figure out. Superman winced at accuracy. You're right. We've been treating you as puzzle to solve rather than person to know. That was wrong. He refilled Saitama's wine with careful attention. So let's start over. Not as Justice League assessing threat, but as people who understand what it means to be different. What did you do before becoming hero? Before the training that made you this? Saitama blinked, caught off guard by genuine interest. I was unemployed, depressed, going to job interviews that went nowhere. Then I saved a kid from weird chin monster and realized I wanted to be hero, like the ones I'd admired as a child. He scratched his bald head, did 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and 10-kilometer run every day for 3 years. Lost my hair, got strong enough to end any fight in one punch. Batman's expression suggested he was calculating whether to laugh or run. Diagnostics on dimensional physics that would make that training regimen produce dark side beating strength. That's not how strength development typically works. I know, Saitama said. Doesn't make sense to me either. But it happened. He took another bite of lamb, then continued with surprising candor. Sometimes I wonder if it was monkey's paw thing. I wanted to be strongest hero, got my wish. But the cost was that being strongest hero is boring. No challenge, no difficulty, no feeling of accomplishment when you win because winning was never in doubt. That's tragedy, Diana said softly. Classical Greek tragedy, achieving exactly what you desired only to discover the achievement hollow. Yeah, Saitama's agreement carried weight of 3 years living that tragedy. In my world, I kept hoping I'd find someone, some monster or villain who'd be strong enough. Boros came close. He could kick me to the moon. Survived several serious punches, made me feel something. But even he couldn't really challenge me. Just lasted longer than others. And Darkseid? Superman asked. Lasted longer than Boros, Saitama admitted. Hit harder, took more punishment. Made me use consecutive normal punches instead of single strike. But still not enough. Still just disappointment wearing fancy armor and talking about conquering universes. Batman processed that assessment. Darkseid, who'd conquered galaxies and broken pantheons, reduced to disappointment. Wearing fancy armor. The detective in him wanted to probe deeper. Understand power ceiling that made new gods look quaint. The human in him recognized existential crisis that all the strength in multiverse couldn't solve. You're looking in wrong place, Batman said finally. Challenge isn't always physical. I've spent 30 years fighting Gotham's corruption with no powers. No enhancements, just training and will. My greatest battles aren't against metahumans. They're against Joker's chaos. Against my own darkness. Against the constant temptation to cross the line. I've drawn. He met Saitama's eyes. Sometimes the hardest fight is choosing not to use your full strength. Batman's right, Diana added. I could conquer surface world if I chose. Amazon. Training. Divine heritage. God-killer weapons. I have means. But greatest challenge is diplomatic restraint. Building bridges between my people and humanity. Choosing to inspire rather than dominate. Power makes everything easy except choosing not to use it. Saitama listened, expression thoughtful. Around them, dinner continued, bread passed. Wine poured, conversation flowing with increasing ease as evening progressed. Superman shared stories about Clark Kent's journalism challenging corporate corruption. Diana described Themyscira politics requiring warriors' patience rather than warriors' strength. Batman discussed cases solved through detective work where punching would have destroyed evidence needed for justice. All of them, Saitama realized, were trying to show him that challenge existed beyond combat. That meaning could be found in complexity rather than difficulty, in moral choices rather than physical struggles. I get what you're saying, Saitama said eventually, that there's more to being hero than fighting. But, he paused, struggling to articulate, feeling that had defined 3 years of effortless victory. I don't feel alive unless I'm fighting. Everything else is just existing, going through motions. The only time I ever feel anything is in those few seconds when I think maybe, finally, this opponent will be the one who makes me try. And then they fall. Diana finished quietly. One punch, and the hope dies again. Yeah, Saitama's agreement was barely whisper. The table fell silent. 3 of DC Universe's greatest heroes recognizing problem they couldn't solve. Superman couldn't provide worthy opponent. He'd lose badly based on Tokyo. Analysis. Wonder. Woman's combat mastery meant nothing against strength that ignored technique. Batman's strategic genius was irrelevant when single punch ended any scenario. They couldn't give Saitama what he needed. Nobody in this universe apparently could. So what do you do? Superman asked finally. When you've accepted that challenge may never come. that your strength exceeds all opposition, that heroism has become routine rather than calling. Saitama looked at his wine glass, watching light play through amber liquid that had traveled from island of warrior, gods to feed dimensional, refugee who couldn't find purpose. I keep being hero anyway, because it's right, because people need saving regardless of whether saving them fulfills me. He looked up, meeting Superman's eyes. But I don't know how long I can keep that up. How many years of going through motions before boredom becomes something worse? Batman understood then, not threat. Assessment, but psychological. Profile of being standing at edge. Not evil, not corruption, but slow erosion of will to continue. Existential crisis that could eventually breed outcomes worse than tyranny. Complete apathy toward universe that couldn't provide meaning. Then we find you reasons beyond combat, Batman said with detective certainty. Community, connections, purposes that matter even when they don't challenge. Diana's right about Amazons. They don't just fight. They build civilization worth fighting for. He stood, commanding attention despite lack of cape. You saved Star City's civilians. That mattered to them regardless of how easy it was for you. Focus on that. The meaning of the action rather than difficulty of achievement. Bruce is right, Diana agreed, standing as well. Come to Themyscira next week. Train with Amazons, not because they can challenge your strength, but because warriors' discipline offers satisfaction beyond victory. Learn our arts, our philosophy, our ways of finding meaning in routine. And join us on patrols, Superman added, rising to join them. Not missions requiring your strength, but neighborhood protection, helping people with problems that can't be solved by punching. Reminding yourself why you became hero in first place. Saitama looked at them, Trinity of DC Universe. Gods and genius trying to save dimensional refugee from himself, and felt something shift. Not excitement, not challenge, but maybe the faint outline of purpose beyond endless search for worthy opponent. Okay, he said quietly. I'll try. They shook hands then. Fellowship sealed through warrior's oath rather than legal contract. Saitama left embassy that night with Themysciran wine in his system. Scheduled training sessions with Diana. Planned patrols with Clark. And Batman's direct line for when Gotham needed problems solved beyond usual rogues gallery. Not what he'd wanted when arriving in this universe, but maybe, slowly, what he needed. The message arrived at 3 a.m. via every communication channel simultaneously, watchtower systems, global emergency broadcasts, individual league communicators, even Saitama's newly established government-issued phone. A face filled every screen, pale skin stretched over insane grin. Purple suit immaculate despite the chaos visible in background. The Joker leaned into camera with theatrical intimacy, eyes dancing with malice that had haunted Gotham for decades. Hello, heroes, Joker crooned, voice carrying sing-song quality that made sanity flinch. Especially you, Mr. Clean. Yes, I'm talking to you, Baldy, the dimensional tourist who's been making my beloved Gotham's so boring with your one-punch problem-solving. His grin widened impossibly. So I've prepared something special. A joke, if you will. And the punchline. He giggled, sound like broken glass in a blender. Well, you'll have to come find out. The feed cut to aerial footage of Arkham Asylum. But wrong, twisted. The Gothic architecture warped into something from nightmare dimensions. The building pulsed with energy that made reality hurt to perceive. Dark multiverse corruption bleeding through dimensional barriers. And at the center stood a portal crackling with the particular wrongness of places where hope went to die. I've opened door to somewhere interesting, Joker continued, face returning to fill screen. Place where all your strength won't matter. Where physics break in ways even you can't punch through. And I've taken hostages, all of Arkham's staff, plus 53 random Gothamites I grabbed for flavor. They're inside, waiting. You have 2 hours before the portal collapses. And they're trapped, forever in a universe where Batman who laughs is God Emperor and laughter is mandatory. His expression shifted to mock sincerity. So here's the joke. Do you risk going into dimension that might actually kill you for people you don't even know? Or do you finally admit what I've always suspected, that power without cost makes heroes as meaningless as their victims? The transmission ended with Joker's laughter echoing across every frequency. Saitama sat up in his apartment bed, phone still glowing with Arkham coordinates. Around Metropolis, other heroes were mobilizing, Superman already airborne, Flash's lightning streaking toward Gotham, Green Lantern's ring painting the sky. But Saitama knew, with certainty born from 3 years of effortless victory, that Joker's message had been directed at him specifically. The Clown Prince of Crime had noticed the bored god in yellow cape and decided to test whether meaning could be found in suffering. Batman's voice came through emergency comm. All League members, converge on Arkham Asylum. This is Code Black, dark multiverse incursion combined with mass hostage scenario. Saitama, if you're listening, do not engage alone. Joker's specifically targeting you, which means this is trap designed around your capabilities. Saitama was already dressed, cape settling around shoulders with familiar weight, red gloves flexing. He looked at his reflection in bathroom mirror, bald head, dead eyes, expression that had carried him through countless disappointments. Joker thought he'd created challenge using dimensional horror and moral complexity. Maybe he was right. The jump from Metropolis to Gotham took 3 seconds, casual, arc across state lines that would have required Superman's flight speed or Flash's velocity. Saitama landed in Arkham's courtyard to find Trinity already assembled, Diana's sword drawn, Clark's heat vision scanning dimensional corruption, Bruce in full Batman regalia analyzing portal composition through Cowl's sophisticated sensors. "You didn't wait," Batman said. Not quite accusation, but close. "He took hostages," Saitama replied simply. "That makes him bad guy who needs punching." "It's not that simple," Diana countered. Warrior's wisdom recognizing complexity Saitama's simple morality missed. The dark multiverse isn't dimension you can punch through. It's place where reality itself is corrupted, where nightmare versions of us rule through twisted logic. Going in there might actually kill you, Superman finished quietly. Which is exactly what Joker wants. To prove that your power has limits, that you're not actually invincible, that somewhere exists challenge you can't overcome. "Good," Saitama said, and for first time since arriving in DC Universe, his expression held something other than boredom. Not quite excitement. Too many disappointments had trained that out of him, but focused attention. Maybe he's right. Maybe this will finally be hard. Batman's jaw tightened beneath cowl. "You're willing to die just to feel challenged." "I'm willing to risk it to save those people," Saitama corrected. "But yeah, if I'm honest, the possibility that it might actually be difficult." He looked at the pulsing portal, dark multiverse energy making his skin crawl in a way nothing else had since arriving. "That's the most interested I've been in anything since I got here." Flash arrived in yellow lightning, followed by Green Lantern's green streak. Both heroes pulling up short at sight of dimensional horror Joker had unleashed. Barry Allen's Speed Force senses screamed warnings about timeline corruption, reality destabilization, wrongness that made quantum mechanics weep. Hal Jordan's ring pulsed with barely controlled panic. On technology recognizing dark multiverse signature from classified core files that ended with recommendations to avoid at all costs. "That's a door to the dark multiverse," Flash said, voice tight. "We can't just walk in there. Every version of those universes is nightmare, where heroes failed, where darkness won. It's literally bad ending made dimension, which is why Joker chose it," Batman said grimly, pulling up analysis from Watchtower sensors. The specific signature matches universe designated. Dark Multiverse, 22. Records suggest it's timeline where Batman Who Laughs won, infected all heroes with Joker toxin, and rules through coalition of corrupted Justice League. He looked at Saitama. "Everyone who enters becomes subject to that universe's laws, physical, mental, spiritual. Your strength might mean nothing there. Your resistance to damage might fail. You could be twisted into nightmare version of yourself. Or I could save those people," Saitama countered. Joker said 2 hours before portal collapses. "How long have we been talking?" 15 minutes, Cyborg reported. Boom tube depositing him alongside Wonder Woman. And Saitama's right, strategic. Discussion is burning rescue window. We need decision. Superman floated higher. Kryptonian senses measuring dimensional stability, calculating odds. Running scenarios where they all died trying to penetrate dark multiverse horror. As leader of Justice League, a symbol of hope, he should have better plan than sending dimensional refugee into obvious trap. But hostages were real. Joker's deadline was real. And sometimes heroism meant walking into trap anyway because alternative was letting innocent people die. We go in together, Superman decided. Full Trinity plus Saitama. Flash maintains Speed Force anchor in case we need emergency extraction. Cyborg monitors dimensional stability. Green Lantern provides defensive constructs. We extract hostages and collapse portal before corruption spreads to Prime Universe. And when we encounter Batman who laughs, Diana asked, already knowing answer. Then we do what we do best, Superman said grimly. Fight impossible odds and win anyway. He looked at Saitama. You want a challenge. You're about to get it. But remember, challenge isn't just about strength. It's about choosing to risk everything for people who can't save themselves. That's what makes someone hero rather than just strong. Saitama nodded slowly, understanding hitting deeper than expected. Joker hadn't just created physical challenge. He'd created moral test. Proved that boredom with power hadn't eroded willingness to sacrifice. That 3 years of effortless victory hadn't made Saitama forget what heroism actually meant. The portal pulsed, countdown to collapse continuing. Through its surface, they could see Arkham's twisted reflection, architecture bent into screaming faces. The building itself corrupted into monument to suffering. And somewhere inside, 53 civilians plus Arkham staff waited for rescue that might not come. Batman pulled out specialized breather designed for hostile environments. Diana blessed her weapons with Hestia's flame, ancient power to combat ancient darkness. Superman's eyes glowed red with barely controlled heat vision. Behind them, supporting heroes established perimeter, ready to prevent dimensional corruption from spreading if rescue failed. Remember, Batman said, voice carrying Dark Knight's absolute certainty despite impossible odds. In the dark multiverse, everything is designed to break hope. Don't let it. Hold on to who you are, what you believe, why you became heroes. That's our only advantage against corruption that specializes in twisting heroes into monsters. They approached the portal together, trinity of gods and genius, accompanied by dimensional refugee who'd accidentally become strongest being in their universe. The energy felt wrong, tasted like despair made tangible, promised suffering beyond anything physical damage could inflict. Saitama stepped through first, casual stride into nightmare dimension, and felt reality shift around him. Not painful, just different. Reality adjusting to accommodate being who operated outside its rules. Behind him, Trinity followed. Divine power and alien strength. And human will crossing threshold into place. Where those qualities had failed before, the portal swallowed them. And Arkham Asylum's courtyard fell silent except for supporting heroes, maintaining watch over dimensional breach that might never release their friends. Inside, darkness waited, with Joker's laughter echoing through corridors built from broken sanity. And for first time since arriving in DC Universe, Saitama felt something he'd almost forgotten, uncertainty. Maybe, finally, this would be hard. The dark multiverse. Arkham existed as architectural nightmare corridors that bent into impossible geometries, walls that breathed with rhythm of tortured hearts, lighting that came from bioluminescent fungi feeding on crystallized screams. Saitama's boots touched floor that flinched beneath his weight, organic and wrong, while behind him Trinity materialized, through dimensional membrane wearing expressions that suggested they'd encountered this particular brand of horror before. Stay together, Batman commanded, cowl sensors struggling to map space that refused to follow Euclidean principles. Dark multiverse corruption works on perception and psychology as much as physics. It shows you twisted versions of yourself, makes you question. The corridor split, and Saitama found himself alone. Not gradual separation. Reality simply edited Trinity from existence mid-sentence, leaving dimensional refugee in hallway that stretched toward infinity in both directions. He turned, seeking door or portal or any landmark. But Arkham had become maze designed to isolate, to break, to corrupt through solitude that forced confrontation with self. Interesting trick, Saitama said to empty air. You going to show me evil version of myself now? That's usually how this goes. Laughter answered, not Joker's theatrical madness, but something worse. Familiar monotone twisted into amusement that came from watching universe burn. Around corner ahead, Figure emerged wearing yellow cape and red gloves. Bald head catching wrong light. Expression carrying satisfaction Saitama had never felt. His dark multiverse reflection smiled with teeth too sharp, eyes too bright, with joy born from absolute power finally used without restraint. "Hello," Dark Saitama said cheerfully. "I'm you if you stop pretending heroism mattered. If you embrace the truth that we both know, that being strong enough to end any threat in one punch makes protection of the weak meaningless. They'll die eventually anyway. We'll be bored forever." He cracked knuckles, sound like breaking worlds. So why not make boredom interesting? Why not see what happens when we stop holding back against cities, planets, dimensions? At least destruction provides novelty that heroism never could. Saitama looked at his corrupted reflection, everything Joker, Luther, and Batman had warned about. The inevitable conclusion of power without challenge. The version of himself who decided that if nothing could make him try as hero, maybe villainy would prove more engaging. "That's stupid," Saitama said simply. "Destroying things is even more boring than protecting them. Nothing fights back when you're that much stronger. It's just—" He searched for words. "More disappointment. Faster." Dark Saitama's smile widened. "But at least it's different disappointment. At least it's choice we make rather than routine we follow. Come on." You felt it when Darkseid offered partnership. That moment of wondering whether conquest would finally provide purpose. You feel it every time you punch another weak villain and pretend their defeat matters. He stepped closer, mirror reflecting truth Saitama had been avoiding. "We're bored. We're lonely. We're trapped in power that makes everything meaningless. So let's make meaning through destruction. Let's finally see what happens when we stop holding back." The attack came faster than Superman could track. Dark Saitama's fist moving with efficiency perfected across timeline, where restraint had died. But Saitama blocked, palm meeting knuckles. Shockwave tearing through impossible architecture and revealing truth beneath. This was psychological attack wearing physical form. Dark multiverse attempting to corrupt through confrontation with self. "I'm not you," Saitama said, pushing back against his reflection. "I get bored. I get lonely. I want challenge that probably doesn't exist. But I'm still a hero. That's not routine. That's choice I make every day despite the boredom." Dark Saitama laughed, landing from repelled attack with casual grace. "Choice built on denial. You think you're better than me because you haven't snapped yet? Give it time. Give it years of this existence. Decades of empty victories. Centuries if this universe makes you immortal. Eventually, you'll see. Power without challenge doesn't build character. It erodes it. And when erosion's complete, we'll meet again." He saluted with mocking cheer. "See you in 10 years, when protecting the weak finally bores you to violence." The reflection dissolved, leaving Saitama alone in corridor that suddenly snapped back to normal geometry. Through walls, he heard distant screaming. Hostages, real ones, trapped somewhere in this nightmare asylum. He moved toward sound, ignoring philosophical horror. Joker had staged in favor of immediate problem. People needed saving. Meanwhile, Superman fought his own reflection. Dark Superman wore black suit emblazoned with twisted S shield. Red eyes glowing with heat vision barely controlled. Expression carrying absolute certainty that had characterized the injustice regime. He floated in throne room built from melted weapons, surrounded by statues of heroes he'd killed for opposing his rule. "I'm peace through power," Dark Superman said, voice carrying authority that had conquered his Earth. "Everything you're afraid of, becoming the dictator, the tyrant, the god who decided humanity needed ruling rather than protecting. And you know what? My Earth is better. No crime, no war, no chaos, just order imposed by strength sufficient to enforce it." He gestured at crystallized. "Civilians preserved in eternal obedience. They're safe. All of them. Forever. Because I stopped pretending democracy worked and simply took control." Clark Kent's fists clenched, Kryptonian strength barely leashed. "You became everything we fight against. Everything Lex warns about. Everything I swore I'd never. Everything you will become." Dark Superman interrupted. "The moment you get tired of watching. Good people die because you respect their free will, more than their lives. One bad day, Clark. That's all it takes. Lois dies, and you'll understand, power without control is just allowing preventable tragedies. He smiled without warmth. So go ahead. Fight me. Prove you're different. But we both know I'm just you with honesty replacing hypocrisy. Batman faced the Batman who laughs. The corrupted Dark Knight stood wreathed in darkness visible, face hidden behind visor made from dark metal, body language carrying. Joker's chaos filtered through Bruce Wayne's strategic genius. Around him, Robins twisted into rabbit. Hounds snarled at their masters' feet. All of Bruce's failures made manifest. All his fears about becoming the thing he fought given nightmare flesh. Hello, Bruce. Batman who laughs crooned in voice that mixed gravel and giggles. Or should I say, hello me. I'm what happens when you finally admit the joke that there's no difference between us and them except one bad day and a decision to laugh instead of brood. He gestured at his Robin hounds. I killed them all, you know. Every single ward who trusted me. And you know what I felt? His smile stretched wrong beneath visor. Relief. No more holding back. No more pretending restraint made us heroes rather than just inefficient. Bruce's cowl had expression, but voice carried Batman's absolute conviction. You're not me. You're everything I resist becoming. The proof that the line I've drawn matters. That choosing not to kill isn't weakness, but strength. You gave in. I won't. Yet, Batman who laughs corrected. You won't give in yet. But entropy takes everyone eventually. Give it time. Diana faced herself as war goddess unlimited. Dark Wonder Woman war armor made from melted peace treaties. Sword dripping with diplomats' blood. Eyes carrying certainty that violence solved all problems more efficiently than negotiation. Around her, Amazons knelt in conquered posture, sisters, forced into service through superior force. I am what you could be, Dark Diana said. Voice carrying warriors' pride unlimited by Amazon philosophy. No more pretending humans deserve partnership. No more diplomatic courtesy to beings who wage war regardless of our patience. Just strength applied where needed. Order imposed through divine right. Peace enforced through overwhelming superiority. She raised sword still wet with justice's blood. Admit it, you've wanted this. Wanted to stop negotiating with monsters and simply cut through problems your sword could solve in minutes. Diana's own blade hummed with Hestia's fire. Truth burning away corruption's lies. I've wanted many things that would be easy, but wisdom isn't about choosing what's easy. It's about choosing what's right. Despite difficulty. You forgot that. I won't. The four confrontations reached crescendo simultaneously, hero and shadow, choice and corruption, restraint and temptation made physical. But Dark Multiverse had miscalculated. It showed them futures born from giving up, from letting power erode principle, from deciding boredom or tragedy justified abandoning heroism. And each hero, in their way, chose to keep resisting. Saitama punched through his dark reflection with simple efficiency, declaring boredom insufficient excuse for evil. Superman rejected the injustice path again, choosing free will over enforced safety despite cost. Batman stared into his greatest fear and reaffirmed the line that defined him. Diana chose compassion over conquest, peace through partnership rather than dominance. The illusions shattered, and Arkham's true architecture revealed itself. Not nightmare. Dimension, but elaborate stage show. Joker's greatest trick using dark multiverse energy, but not actual dark multiverse. Fear toxin refined with dimensional corruption, making heroes face themselves while Joker watched from control room broadcasting everything to Gotham. The hostages were real, trapped in cells throughout Arkham. But the psychological warfare had been theater designed to prove heroes could be broken. Joker's laughter echoed through speakers as Trinity and Saitama converged on his location. And the punchline is, you passed. You all chose heroism despite existential horror, showing you easier paths. Isn't that hilarious? His voice carried genuine delight mixed with disappointment. Especially you, Baldy. I really thought absolute power with absolute boredom would crack. But no, you're exactly as boring as you look. One-punch man who's too simple to be corrupted. Saitama found Joker's control room, kicked down door reinforced with technology stolen from Cadmus, and stared at Clown Prince of Crime, who'd orchestrated entire scenario as cosmic joke. The madman grinned from behind banks of monitors showing freed hostages, heroes recovering from psychological assault. Gotham watching broadcasts that proved their protectors could withstand corruption. Hello, Joker said brightly. Ready for the real punchline? You're under arrest, Saitama said simply. Boring, Joker declared. Where's the drama? The philosophical debate. The moment where I make you question everything. He pressed button, and room filled with Joker toxin concentrated to lethal levels. Let's see if your body's as immune to chemistry as it is to physics. Saitama breathed toxin that would have killed normal humans in seconds. Neurotoxin designed to force laughter until respiratory failure. His expression didn't change, didn't smile, didn't break into murder giggles that defined Joker's victims. Just walked through poison gas, grabbed Joker by collar, and carried him toward GCPD transport that had arrived with Commissioner Gordon. You're not even going to monologue, Joker whined. Toxin failing to affect physiology that operated outside conventional biology. Not going to explain why my plan failed? Not going to. You took hostages, hurt people, tried to corrupt heroes through fear, Saitama interrupted. That makes you bad guy. Bad guys get punched and arrested. Pretty simple. He handed Joker to Gordon, who accepted Clown Prince with practiced weariness, then turned to find Trinity emerging from Arkham with freed hostages. They'd all faced their darkest reflections and chosen heroism. Anyway, not because it was exciting or fulfilling or challenging, but because it was right. Batman approached Saitama, cowl hiding expression but voice carrying something almost like respect. You could have killed him, ended the threat permanently. Everyone would have understood Joker's body count spans decades. But you arrested him instead. Why? Saitama looked at Dark Knight with same dead eyes. Because I'm a hero. Heroes don't kill unless there's absolutely no choice. And there's always choice, even when it's boring. Superman landed beside them, cape settling with relief. The dark multiverse energies dissipating. Joker used corrupted samples to power the illusions but couldn't actually open true portal. We were never in real danger, just psychological warfare designed to break us. Did it work? Diana asked quietly. No, Saitama said. Then, after pause, but it showed me something. I've been so focused on finding challenge that I forgot why I became hero in first place. Not for excitement, not for difficulty, just because people needed protecting, and I could help. He looked at the freed hostages, reuniting with families, Gordon securing Joker, Gotham's heroes doing the unglamorous work of disaster relief. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. Batman's jaw tightened beneath cowl, something passing across his features. That might have been recognition, or respect, or just grim acknowledgement. Welcome to the Justice League, he said quietly. Not as member under surveillance or asset to contain. As colleague who understands what we all understand, that heroism means choosing right thing, despite existential boredom, philosophical horror, or personal cost. The four heroes stood in Arkham's courtyard while dawn broke over Gotham, washing nightmare architecture in light that suggested renewal despite darkness. Around them, support team processed hostages, collapsed Joker's equipment, began cleanup of psychological warfare that had almost succeeded. Saitama looked at his hands, same hands that had punched through dimensions, fought Darkseid to stand still, saved countless civilians through overwhelming force, power sufficient to reshape universe, wielded in service of simple heroism that refused to become complex. Not exciting, not fulfilling his search for challenge, but meaningful in ways that transcended difficulty. Maybe he thought that was the real challenge, not finding opponent who could make him try, but finding purpose that mattered even when everything came easy. So, Flash said, materializing in yellow lightning with his characteristic nervous energy. We doing that Justice League dinner thing again? Because I vote yes. Maybe invite Saitama more often. Dude just stared down his evil self and looked bored. That's hardcore. Diana smiled. Warrior's approval earned through trials survived. Agreed. Saitama, you interested in regular fellowship? Not missions or assignments, just friendship with people who understand power's burden. Saitama scratched his bald head, considering. In his old universe, he'd been fundamentally alone, too strong to relate to, too simple to understand complex hero politics. Here, despite power gap, despite boredom, despite everything, he'd found people who actually got it, who understood choosing heroism despite emptiness, maintaining principles despite power sufficient to ignore them. Yeah, he said quietly. That sounds good. Gotham's sun climbed higher, painting city in gold that had no business existing in place defined by shadows. But that was Gotham's secret. Batman's lesson: darkness persisted, but so did light. Heroes got tired, got bored, got tested by horror that showed them easier paths. And they chose heroism anyway, because easy wasn't the point. 3 months after arriving in DC Universe, Saitama established routine that looked nothing like his old life, but felt more substantial. Weekly dinners with Justice League, where heroes shared not missions, but stories, burdens, the quiet struggles that came with power and responsibility. Training sessions with Diana on Themyscira, where Amazons taught him that warriors' discipline existed beyond combat, art, philosophy, community building that survived when battles ended. Patrols with Superman through Metropolis where they helped people with problems unsolvable by punching, disaster relief, infrastructure repair, simply being present for citizens who needed reminder that heroes cared beyond crisis response. Contract work with Wallers, Argus for scenarios requiring his specific capabilities, providing purpose through specialized problem solving. He never found the worthy opponent he sought. Darkseid remained strongest being he'd encountered, and even that had been disappointment. The existential boredom didn't disappear. Every fight still ended in one punch. Every threat still fell to overwhelming force. Challenge remained elusive as ever. But he'd found something unexpected: people who understood. Heroes who faced similar struggles with power and purpose. Who chose restraint despite capabilities that could reshape worlds. Who got up every day and continued being heroes not because it fulfilled them, but because it was right. Batman was right. The real challenge wasn't physical. It was choosing not to use full strength. Not to let boredom erode principles. Not to let absolute power justify abandoning heroism for something more interesting. Some days, Saitama still hoped for genuine fight. Still imagined opponent who could finally make him try. Who could return meaning to combat that had become routine. Darkseid's defeat had proven DC Universe held beings of tremendous power, but not sufficient to challenge him. And maybe that was okay. Maybe purpose existed beyond personal fulfillment. Maybe heroism meant protecting people whether it was exciting or not. Whether it challenged you or not. Whether it filled the emptiness or not. On a rooftop in Metropolis, watching Superman coordinate disaster relief after metahuman incident, Saitama realized something. He wasn't alone anymore. Wasn't just the overpowered hero drifting through universe searching for meaning in increasingly boring fights. He was part of something. Not quite family, not quite team, but fellowship of beings who understood power's burden and chose to carry it anyway. The Justice League communicator on his wrist, gift from Diana after Arkham. Symbol of trust earned rather than surveillance maintained, chimed with new alert. Another crisis. Another threat. Another scenario that would probably end in one punch. Saitama cracked his knuckles once and jumped toward trouble. Still bored. Still searching. Still hoping somewhere. Somehow, this universe held challenge he sought. But no longer doing it alone. And in universe of gods and monsters, where absolute power so often became tyranny, that made him something rare. A being of infinite strength who remained fundamentally, stubbornly, boringly heroic. The dark multiverse had shown him easier paths. Darkseid had offered partnership in conquest. Luthor had promised purpose through opposition. Joker had tried to prove boredom would break him. All had failed against the simple truth: Saitama was a hero. Not because it was exciting. Not because it was fulfilling. Not because it was challenging. Just because people needed saving, and he could help. That was enough. Had to be enough. Would be enough until the day, if it ever came, when he finally found what he'd been seeking. Until then, he'd keep being hero for fun. In universe that had taught him fun wasn't the point. The point was showing up anyway.